Being on best behavior. John said be on best behavior.
I don't know what it is. Let me come up this way. There you go.
John? Oh, he's ready to go.
John, how you doing? Well, long time no see. Yeah.
Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
You okay?
Yeah, doing good. You?
Good.
So I had Monday. Be paused a minute.
Pretty well.
Today?
For a Monday?
You mean today?
Yeah, today.
You went okay.
Today.
You went okay. Never goes quite as planned.
No.
Sure.
Surprises.
Andy, how
Hey,
you doing?
good.
John?
Wow.
John, what's up? I don't mean to issue you, just want to call me more with it.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
know.
give me a-
Yeah.
They're gonna work on it tomorrow.
I think
Yeah.
that's
Little
8:45.
project.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's weird how that works out like this, 'cause
Start taking a pool. You never know, you can have one.
Yeah, I know.
Remember,
Pavement doesn't seem
that's
to be
what they
different
never
now.
had.
No, I just happened to be walking over there and then it rained and then it got worse. Somebody. Yeah, it's hard to see unless you're right there.
Like an hour and 3 minutes.
so yeah, they'll work on that tomorrow. Start
Yeah, I know.
putting it back in.
Yeah, you're right, although as you know, we get some
Yeah.
that were.
Yeah, I didn't want somebody falling in there. No, I put some
I think we're
cones
probably
around
over
it too,
setting
so
right
nobody-
now. We're live, John?
Yes, we are live.
The wastewater treatment plant today helping Dad trying to get sludge out of that second SPR. That ready.
Did I miss a call from you
to
today, Bob?
I'm sorry?
Did I miss a call
That
from
pump
you
that's
today?
down in there just pumps so slow.
Yeah, you did. I remember that.
I know.
Don't ask me what it's about.
And
No
there-
way.
Yeah, I can imagine.
They said it wasn't important. I remember that part too, and I guess it really wasn't.
Hi, Chief.
You ever had onion rings at Carl's Jr.? Carl's Jr.'s onion rings are really good.
Or you can come up here.
Carmen, can you hear us okay?
Can you hear us, Carmen?
Good, good, good.
I sure can. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, we can hear you loud and clear.
Uh-oh, too loud? Sorry, Mayor.
We're good. Right, it's 5:30. We're gonna go ahead and get started. We got quite a bit on our work session that we need to get through. We're gonna start out with our prosecutor's contract update. Has everybody met Suzanne Rogers? This is
Suzanne, come on up to the
Rogers.
seat next to Diana.
This is the gal that's been in here prosecuting since 2004 or something?
2004.
2004.
Yeah.
And
Incredible.
we haven't heard, we've had 2 judges and we haven't heard complaints about it. So, all right, so what, so what Suzanne is asking, what do we currently pay you?
1,300.
1,300?
Yeah, pretty
It's
good.
about, it's like 1,200 with the.
Mileage. And what Suzanne's asking, and it's, she put in her letters that she's been dedicated to the city for many years. She enjoys being up here. She liked, Judge Wheatley, and now we have Michael Goodby, that everything seems to be flowing and working good. And Suzanne is asking for a little bit of an increase in pay. She was asking for us to increase her to $1,500 a month, which would be $18,000 a year instead of that. So we do have this on our regular agenda. So is there anything that you'd like to say to us, Suzanne?
Just to thank you all for having me all these years. I was thinking as I was driving up here that for 17 years, every Thursday with maybe two, one that had to do with COVID and one that had to do with me being sick, I've been here. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. I enjoy the people that I work with, particularly Diane. I don't want her leaving ever. Okay, you Tuesday.
These are Tuesdays.
68 days, did you say, or something? What is it now?
69.
Yeah, I don't.
La, 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 la.
And yeah, I mean, I've really enjoyed meeting the people that are here, even as defendants, and enjoy the smaller kind of community because there's a lot of times that I actually know the people who have been before me before and kind of know their history and things that I can work around or work against because they're not doing things any better. And would like to stay here.
Yeah, you've lived through generations here.
I have lived through generations here, which I'm surprised that y'all are not commenting about how I could do this for so long and be so young.
Yeah, well,
That was your, I'm sorry, I didn't
You
mean
just
that.
stole my thunder.
I didn't mean to say thunder there.
I'd just like to say thank you for your leadership. Get up here every Thursday once a month and make sure that we have somebody to defend our laws here. So, thank you very much.
We're very fortunate.
This is going to be an action item on our regular meeting. So if you've got questions now or thoughts, it's time to throw them at Suzanne.
We appreciate you putting up with the city councils all these years.
Hasn't been a problem for me.
I
Anyway,
could say that you're putting up some of the city staff for many years.
There you go.
Try our mayors for now.
anyway, now we're super fortunate. I mean, this is a really long tenure and it's been a really long time since you asked for some, even a modest raise. So I just want to thank you very much.
And I thought your reasoning was very clear.
Thank you.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Well, thanks for making the trip up here.
Sure.
It sounds pretty positive. We'll have this on.
All right.
And is this going to be for our next budget year, or will we go ahead and do that now?
I was proposing August 1st. there.
August 1st,
We can absorb that for the rest of the year.
My birthday's August 2nd,
Oh.
so if it goes through on August 1st, it'll be a good birthday present. Thank you.
Okay, all right.
Thank you very much.
Suzanne. Thanks for everything. Good seeing you.
You too. Nice meeting y'all.
Nice to see you.
Have a safe trip back.
Okay, our next agenda item, 16th Avenue and Virginia Street improvements. You know, we've heard over the past several weeks some concerns. It revolved around our habitat project, but it kept coming back about 16th Street being considered dangerous and some concerns about that. One thing that I do want to say is the 16th Street improvements has nothing to do with the habitat project. It's two completely separate items. But hearing some of the responses from council about getting an engineer, I don't know who engineer, Tracy, our engineer from JDA, to take a look at it and really kind of dive into what it would take, what it would look like, and what the city and you read in your packet, there is some responsibility for the property owners as well. And we're talking about walls and retaining walls that hold roads, and it specifically states in our municipal code that those residents are responsible for those. So Tracy came up with about 4 different options to discuss with us. And I know a couple of, and one thing that I want to, we talk about flatness this thing out. Once, if we do more than just try to improve the surface on this thing, we're going to have to really look at bringing it in with our requirements for our buildings, and that's 7%. And the way that it is now, there's no way to do it at 7%. But with that, Tracy, if you let you take the lead and kind of show us what you've come up with, what it would consist of, and
In person, it's really good to meet everybody in person. It's been a long time coming. So I'm Tracy Gall with JDA. You've seen me on Teams, I think, a few times, but good to be here in person. I just did a real high level overview of some options that could be considered. As we go through these, I think you'll see that a lot of them may not really be feasible, and I'll explain why. The first piece of information that I want to start with, just as kind of the ground floor, is to show you the right of way the city has in the project vicinity. And this should be in your packet. But what's relevant here is you really have no right of way on what's referred to as Wall Street. There's a little piece up here at the end of 15 or 14, and a little piece right here. But other than that, there is no right of way, city right of way on the roadway referred to as Wall Street, either this portion on the north end or this more southern portion that's behind the Habitat property. So just keep that in mind. The options I looked at were 4 different options, which I labeled A, B, C, and D in no particular order, but options A and B are kind of the same nature. And what I'm looking at here is there any way that we could reconfigure that portion of 16th Street between Virginia and the upper portion of Wall Street that would allow us to reduce that slope? So to put this in perspective, the difference in elevation between Virginia and Upper Wall Street is about 37 feet. And with the existing length of that road, that equates to a slope in excess of 20% on average. I went and drove that before we came to the meeting tonight, and it's one way on Wall Street, you come down 16th. And with the aggregate that's washed out onto 16th Street, it was like a controlled crash coming down that portion above Wall Street for the aggregates out on that road. It's that steep. So there's no easy fix. This alignment shown here provides curvature to the east and then back into the existing intersection at Virginia. We can increase the length of the roadway by about 45 feet. And while it's a substantial reduction in slope, it just brings us down to 16.5%. So well over the city's standard requirements. In fact, in excess of any roadway design allowance I know in the state of Colorado still. To talk in terms of cost, this option is extremely expensive. There would be retaining walls on the south side of the roadway, the north side of the roadway, and the east side of the roadway to facilitate this construction. Throwing the cost of the walls aside, this represents 6 figures worth of construction cost just to build this roadway with the curb and gutter, providing a width that would support 2-way traffic in accordance with your standards. And you know, these walls by code would really be the responsibility of the private property owners.
That's outside the city right away, right? So
It doesn't matter. Oh, I'm sorry, you would have to get right of way also. That's another cost, I'm sorry. You're right. There's additional right of way here that I have not included that. You can see there would be a displacement. The cast home would have to be taken. Habitat would lose at least half of a duplex to facilitate this alternative. So I give this a very low feasibility. It's just going to be extremely expensive. The retaining walls alone, should they be required of the private property owners to build those, probably have a cost by themselves of $300,000 to $400,000. They're massive. You know, these walls are in the order of about average of 10 foot tall. Even with a pretty basic, just concrete wall without any aesthetic treatments, it's that.
Are you talking about 300,000 to 400,000 collectively or
Total.
each? So
In total. Yeah.
And what's again the elevation or the grade? What's the percentage grade?
The percentage grade that we could achieve with this is about 16 and a half,
And it's currently
20 and a half. Excuse me. So a reduction from 20 and a half to 16 and a half.
So what kind of, Carmen, question for you. If we do something like this and we don't meet our own requirements for brick, does that put us in another position that somebody says, well, it's not built to a 7% grade or less? And could potentially have the same situation that it's still a dangerous road?
I think you would be subject to the same criticism as now, Mayor, of, that grade not even meeting the city's standards, and perhaps even in a worse, right? Because this, as I understand it, the existing condition has sort of organically grown up over time rather than reflected a very conscious choice and construction project on behalf of the city. This would be a very conscious choice to construct a roadway that still was inadequate. Now, granted, it's better, so it's a practical improvement. I don't know that legally you've put the city in much of a better position, to be honest. And I will reiterate, I'm glad Tracy mentioned for a number of these options, a few of these options, there will certainly be above and beyond design and engineering costs and construction costs, but costs of acquisition of property, of whether that's negotiated or through the power of eminent domain, that's clearly, as council and the city is familiar with, that's clearly potentially a significant cost as well. So I'm glad Tracy touched upon that. I was going to if he did not.
Thank you, Carmen.
So right now, this is just a private drive. In fact, I drove up there, there was a big sign saying private drive, stay out. So we don't own it, it's a private drive, so why is it the city's concern?
I think that we have two things here because 16th is the city's
Coming down.
Wall Street's not.
Where's it down?
Can you point out, where's the?
Where's 16th right away in?
Right here. So basically at the
So we
stop
do own
property.
that, okay.
So if we don't have right of way on that street and spots, how do we perform maintenance?
We agreed to maintain it for them, meaning, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, that we plow it and when we can get a truck up there.
My understanding, and I know at one time there was a letter that the former mayor and former city administrator had, that when that was annexed into the city, that they had signed an agreement that they would be responsible for all the retaining walls, and the city would be responsible for minor maintenance to include filling the potholes or the dirt road, whatever you want to call it, and plowing it. And that was about the extent of the city's responsibility.
I think it was called actually the Wall Street annexation.
It should be something in writing, right?
Oh, we've got something in there.
Okay.
I've seen it.
That answers my question.
Yeah.
All right, good.
To go to the next option B, it's just kind of a rehash of the first option, trying to create more length to reduce slope. Unfortunately, this is a lesser it's even less feasible than option A. There's impacts to the property here, and then it takes out an entire duplex of the Blue Spruce development. This wouldn't be configured this way. I just quit drawing when I saw what was going on here. You would make this a 90-degree intersection to allow traffic to make this left turn. But at any rate, this really isn't a viable option, and it has the same type of associated cost as the option A.
Just out of curiosity, is the grade any different than option A?
Very similar,
Yes, sir.
Bob. The length here is 220 feet versus 225 feet
Oh,
for
okay.
option A. So it's, for all intents and purposes, is the same. Option C then would be an option that would allow you to reduce the slope probably to or less than even your 7% requirement. But the impacts here are enormous. In terms of properties that would have to be taken along this portion of Wall Street here. It pretty well wipes out everything through here. We'd have to acquire a right of way throughout this length. And, this is by far the most costly option. You're probably looking at $250,000 in construction for this option alone.
Or if you made that a one-way instead of a two-way.
You could, it would be one way all the way from 14th. That's a long one-way stretch on the Wall Street portion. But certainly that could be done.
And that reduce cost a little bit.
It could, yeah, you would reduce that down to probably a 12-foot lane then, and so the paving cost, you could probably cut in half. I'd say you could probably cut out 40 to 50,000 of that number that I threw out.
So we're looking at around 200,000.
Probably in that range, yes.
We can build this road out to 17 at 200 grand.
That's
Well,
just the-
Well, then you gotta. then we
I
gotta
haven't
take
included
4
retaining
homes.
walls in that, Mayor,
Oh.
or right of way.
Okay, okay.
So that's,
And acquisition of properties too.
yes, so that number is a small portion of the total project cost. I didn't know how to throw this together numbers wise, but the notion being that retaining walls would be someone else's responsibility potentially. But again, the retaining wall in this case would be this entire length south of the roadway. That would replace the existing stone retaining wall along this portion of Wall Street.
That seems like that wouldn't likely be done after that project's built. That would have to be done prior to.
Yeah.
Well, who would be responsible for that wall if that property was vacant right now?
They own the property.
The property
So
owner.
it would be Habitat?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, plus the other one was along there too.
Right.
Are you asking who's responsible for it right now?
Well, he would be because he owns the property.
Yeah, I was wondering who's responsible for that retaining wall right now?
You know, the
Habitat is responsible for it now and after their project
Right.
to hold that road up.
So we'd have a little bit, cut and see.
So it appears that the wall is on the Habitat property to me, if you could take the county GIS apart here.
And what kind of shape is that wall in? Did you look at it by any chance?
The stone wall is suspect at best, Art. There's no way for a structural engineer to really give you an assessment. They look at it and scratch their head and say, well, replace it. They're not gonna hang their hat on that being worth much structurally. Concrete wall at the bottom is a little bit different, and that has been observed by a structural engineer, and they said it needs to be replaced.
So is this project gonna replace that wall? Do we know? The Habitat?
The lower wall, they plan to replace the lower wall, correct?
But not all the way up to Wall Street.
No, sir, no, the rock wall they intend to leave in place.
Even though they're responsible for the upper wall too?
That's my understanding. Their proposal is to leave that wall as it is today. It's
Well, it's
not
over the
nearly
road,
as
though.
tall, but it is probably
Right
3 or
now.
4 foot tall.
When you
If
start
it
working.
fails, then they're responsible,
Yes, correct.
and that's Habitat.
That, we had somebody, we had another issue kind of like this on Wall Street, that the property owner below Wall Street, they had to replace that retaining wall.
A different part.
Right
It seems
in
like
front
a
of Kate Collier's house.
pretty big liability to buy a piece of property.
Well,
And that's what we're finding out too, is people buy, they have no idea. In that document also, it was stated that the properties would deed that right away over to the city. And that was back in 1989 or something. and it
Yeah, a
never
long
happened.
time ago.
It just never. it just never happened.
well, we say Habitat, but if they're all sold and the residents move in, are the residents therefore?
Yeah,
Residents would be,
They take over
owners
the
of each
liability.
individual lot.
and I hope they know that they are responsible for that. But they're expressing that. What the
Well, in
purpose
the
is.
title work, you'd think that Habitat would be responsible to let them know that. My worst case scenario is if that fails after property owner has that liability, what if that property owner can't afford to pay to have that
Then we
retained?
put,
So that's no
then we
different
put a
than,
lien on their property and we pay for it and fix it. And when and if they sell it, then.
that's no different than every other place in Wall Street. And a pretty good price tag.
Yeah, because they have to, if they sell it before a certain time, they have to pay off that second mortgage as well, so they would.
You know, almost 3 of them.
Pardon?
And three of them nearly.
I mean, and then when in the case of a bankruptcy or something like that, you know?
Well,
And these low income, these people don't have that money.
That's just another whole can of worms right there.
well, yeah, but nobody has the kind of money they're talking about here for these walls. I mean, it'd be
Oh,
rare.
I'm told you do.
Huh?
I'm told you do. That's what you never told me.
How tall would that wall be?
Well, that
Might have to
existing
go to that.
concrete wall behind
I'll
the
tell you.
Blue Spruce property gets to a height of,
Yeah.
probably close to 10 feet
Oh,
at least
Lord.
here. It's a big, big wall.
I did a 4 foot by 6 wide was 10 grand.
Yeah. So extrapolate from there.
And only 20 feet long.
Yeah,
So. Okay,
a lot of money.
man.
The last option I look at, which I think has some viability, is really just, what I would consider a feasible betterment to 16th Street. The biggest, culprit you have during the spring, summer and fall timeframe is, stormwater runoff. And what you have now, you've got, aggregate that's washed out onto the street, creating, an unsafe condition. And the way I would suggest attempting to remedy that would be drainage pans on each side of 16th, coming down and tying into the existing curb and gutter south of Virginia. We would have to create a transition for traffic on Virginia to traverse these. And then some form of surface treatment on this portion of 16th Street.
So
To enhance traction.
What kind of material are we talking about to prevent, not prevent, it's not.
It's not going to prevent, you need to go to what I would call a high traction or high abrasive type surface treatment. The ones I've used have not been in mountain areas. We've used these in rural portions of Illinois at, say, T intersections. And we try to put lighting in at these intersections to help prevent accidents. And then 200 feet back from that intersection, we'll put in these high abrasive treatments to enhance traction for primarily for wet pavement more than iced pavement. It is basically a chip seal treatment, but you use a large angular aggregate to enhance traction.
But when there's ice on it and covering those rocks, then it's no good anymore.
You're right, it has to be maintained. It would have to have, with this treatment, it would be amenable to putting salt on, which helps.
What about mag chloride?
Mag chloride would work. And the other thing in your favor here is this is south facing. The slope is south facing, which helps a lot.
And then how often would you have to maintain a surface like that? Is that something that's gonna be more maintenance than a regular surface?
No, it would probably be about similar to what's there now. You know, it's gonna tend to rut with, if there's heavy traffic on it. The saving grace is the low volume of traffic. That type of surface performs pretty well under low volume. They tend to be self-healing. When you get to the summertime and you get a lot of direct sun on them, that oil comes back to the surface and it kind of heals itself. So there are some advantages from that perspective too. I think it would greatly reduce your maintenance time and cost with this approach. And the drainage improvements would have the most significant impact. To alleviate washouts in this portion of the road would go a long way to making John's life quite a lot easier, I think.
And with this one, there's no retaining walls that need to be redone, no properties for us to.
The notion would be this would be on the existing surfaces there now. We try to make this as wide as possible, which would still only allow for one-way traffic. But the width between the gutter pans, I think we could get at least 10 feet.
Is that some kind of berm or something on the edges or?
Well, what I've drawn here is a 3-foot wide concrete gutter pan. It would just be a V-shaped drainage pan, like
So
you see
there's
through an
no-
intersection in town.
No curb or? is it-
I wouldn't propose putting curb there, no.
Tracy, how much elevation adjustment would there be along Virginia Street to take care of drainage and so on?
In here?
Yeah, in the east-west, traffic going east and west there.
Well,
You
these
said
drainage
it'd be
pans would probably be about 2 inches deep.
Oh, okay.
So they're just a V-shaped,
Yeah,
gutter.
typical. Okay, but the grade elevation really wouldn't be changed there.
No, we try to match the existing street as much as
Okay.
possible.
I misunderstood what you said.
Yeah, there'll be a bump. I mean, you'd feel it when you drove through it, but it wouldn't be horrible.
Okay.
It'd be like what you have in, I imagine there's some in the grocery store parking lot, places like that, use these quite a lot for surface drainage.
John, would Roto Mills work on that with the roller? Just on top of the current surface or no way?
Probably not.
No.
The rate that the water comes down off of there, we've cleaned that street numerous times this summer.
Yeah.
And with the last two rains over the weekend,
Wouldn't even.
you can see what that did.
It
One
wouldn't hold up.
caveat to that is right where Mr. Cass's house is at, about where the red arrow's on it.
Yeah.
His service line, sewer service line is about 2 inches deep. We've caught it with the plow and broke it. And then on the other side of that arrow is the gas line, which may be 3 or 4 inches deep. So, yeah, anything that's on there would have to be put at existing conditions unless we could get XL to bury their gas line, basically. And then we'd have to figure out how to drop his service line a little bit deeper.
Is the
But when we speak of road maintenance and that, I just want everybody to keep in mind, when it's snowing, typically in the morning, we have 2 people out plowing all the city. So it's not just dedicating one person to a street to plow that. If it continues to snow, Mr. Curtis knows it's not just, you can't just stop in one place. It's constantly going, and it may be 2 people. It takes about 2.5 hours to do one trip through town on all the streets.
Yeah.
So it's going to be another 2.5 hours to get back to this street. And I don't think the expectation should be there that we're just going to stop what we're doing here and go plow that real fast. Unfortunately, it kind of is what it is until the city decides if they want to rebuild this street or if there's other streets that serve more of the community that needs to be done first, or this one.
And that's when we did our ratings, when HDR did that assessment for us, these roads are ones that are said and need to be worked on and done, but we also took into the assessment that how much of the traveling public's using it. So that's kind of why, even though it was rated a D, that's why I got pushed down, because there's only 8 people up there.
Right.
And it made more sense to do Riverside down there, where 150, 200 people live down there. And that needed it too. But what do you see as cost for something like this, Tracy?
Cost for the construction costs would probably be in the range of 15 to 20,000.
That's it.
So the other thing is consideration is fire permit. They're always complaining about that too. So.
About that road.
Yeah, they said, well, years ago, I don't know if they still do.
And I know there was some question about fire being able to get up there. I didn't know this, but the fire authority actually built 2 trucks for those roads.
Oh,
So we've got it in our station down here that were specifically made if we had a fire up there, we could get up there. Small cars.
They know.
What is the 20% grade consistent for that whole corner, or does it change a little bit at different spots?
Wall Street does not have a whole lot of grade change from east to west. I won't say it's flat, but by comparison, it's flat.
Right.
But the slope starts about right here at the Scott property, and pretty much, I would say the steepest part is right in here by the red arrow. But it didn't flatten out too much until you get past Virginia Street.
And we've kind of discussed amongst council with the Habitat Project, the conflict on 16th of Virginia has been a big concern of everybody's, and we talked about potentially making that dead end, one way in and one way out. But we're finding that to put a hammerhead or a turnaround in there, there's not enough room. So the way that, and then we talked about, we've talked about it with Tracy and Andy and I have talked about, like the arrow is, making that a one-way to the east. And that would make a lot of sense.
In fact, I'm showing that here on this option D, that Virginia would be reversed, made one way east for this block at least.
And then anybody that was
that was their units and they just come up 6 days and take a ride on Virginia.
Yeah, the, motivation for this is just that you would not have traffic approaching this bad intersection from the east. So all the duplex owners would have to leave Virginia and come out 17.
So just a question and a thought, if you make Virginia Street, that section eastbound from 17th to Virginia Canyon is a one-way westbound.
Oh, it is.
Yes, it is.
All of this.
Look at all that.
And then also, if you're going eastbound on Virginia between 17th and Virginia Canyon, at the intersection of Virginia Canyon and 17th is a very tall rock wall that you can't see Virginia Canyon unless you pull 3/4 of the way out into the street. So we just moved the problem to another intersection,
It's just
or did we serve the problem?
We're just chasing it.
I guess I'm not sure that you would have to change the one-way direction of this from west to east necessarily. I have spent some time thinking about it. If this remained one way to the west where all traffic flowed into 17th in both directions, I personally don't see right now that that's a huge problem. And then it alleviates that concern of sight distance at Virginia Canyon.
Do we have a concern that some of those local residents come down that hill a little bit out of control with ice and potential for a head-on collision?
At this intersection?
Yeah.
They've got that now.
I think we have that
now,
on
they were
every
adding more
north-south
traffic to it
streets.
too.
8 units is 10% feet is that much no traffic, especially with subsidized housing. We had a couple of comments that said that should be a city parking lot. Now, how would that be, putting 45 parking places in there? Now you got Joe Blow from Texas trying
Yeah,
to,
you got a lot of
I mean,
density
not from
traffic
Texas, from.
all the time, constantly.
Yeah, so that didn't make a lot of sense, because that just put more traffic in there.
Not picking on those taxis.
So we don't have enough room for a turnaround?
We looked at it, and Jared, can you speak on that? On that?
Yeah, the main issue is you have to have enough space to pull in, but yet back out. And that's really the problem.
Back out, when you leave, you gotta arch up into this property quite a ways to get back down. It's just tough area. You've got the Elks going on here, so you cannot do anything on the south side of Virginia at this intersection, so it'd have to be L-shaped, allow enough space, probably 30 feet for a delivery truck, say, or garbage truck to pull into that. It can only back up to just north of the Elks. And then this radius to come out of here is gonna sweep way up into here to get out. Basically, there's just nothing you can do there.
There's a fire hydrant on the backside of the Elks as well. You'd end up with a minimum of 5-point turn, probably more than that. So, if that's feasible.
Probably even more with a UPS truck or a pedal or
Or a garbage truck.
or a garbage truck.
That's an even larger vehicle typically.
Despite everything, it looks like the solution with the least problems. It's not problem free. When it looks so flat here.
Yeah, 37 foot from here down to the house here, and you can see this retaining wall is every bit is higher than the trailer. So, say it's 10 feet is no stretch.
I'm sure they did a structural investigation on that before they bought the property, right?
Yeah, the rock wall, as you can see, is closer to probably 4 to 5 foot in height. Well, I've done a lot of that, y'all. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions if there are any. Tough situation.
Thoughts,
Considering
counsel?
the cost difference, and apparently somewhat fewer problems. Like that part of the best option.
So I think we heard loud and clear some of the concerns that some of our community members had, and I think that we're taking a very good stab at trying to, like we said, to fix it to a 7% grade is, I think that's one. I don't know if any council would be willing to start condemning properties to do this. You know, typically just houses for them to do this. But us making an effort to put a new surface on there and put some kind of drainage in there that Tracy's telling us that will help. It won't solve the problem, but it definitely help.
Definitely a betterment.
Is that a house right on the corner?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. You almost said the porch.
So thoughts, council, do we want to go ahead and have JBA draw up some drawings and us look at, go ahead and putting this in our capital improvements and getting this road worked on, trying to get this done?
I think that's a great suggestion.
It is.
I think bringing up the plan, original plan, progress through the town, fix things up originally.
Well, because this could trigger
I mean, this is
13th Street.
on a lower-
All of a sudden, somebody's gonna say, wait a minute, we have the same problem. You know,
Right, that's what I'm
but
saying.
13th got resurfaced with Colorado Boulevard. So it's got, I haven't ever heard any complaints on that one. Then 14th is pretty flat, 14th is pretty steep, so 15th is not too bad, all right?
So I know John, problematic thing with how snow falls down at a fast rate of speed, and there's only two guys. But we're proactive trying to get the mag 4 ahead of the storm. Is that, do we have the capability to put that down?
We don't currently have it. We would have to buy tanks.
Piece of equipment.
We'd have to buy storage tanks and pieces of equipment to do that.
So we only do salt and sand, right? Salt and sand on the roads.
That might be something we consider looking at. I mean, there's other streets in the town that,
Thinking about a public works facility is putting in a storage tank for mag chloride. That easy to add in.
I think we could make that happen,
No
space
cost.
wise.
No cost.
Well, I can't work.
I
that
tried.
It would be-
I tried.
Yeah, very tall, narrow tank.
Yeah.
Right.
And we need to know that because if that's something we're gonna do, John's gonna have to know a number of put in his budget, mag chloride. Would that be the only road that you'd probably use it on?
Well, I mean, we can use it on other roads. And there's a thing about mag chloride. If it's snowing hard, you don't want to use mag chloride because then it just makes really slick mush on the road. And I'm
Okay,
sure
yeah,
that
people-
Mr. Clark has
Complain in
witnessed
that,
that.
that's all.
might not be
It's,
effective on
it's
hills.
not the greatest, it's not the greatest thing. It's temperature sensitive. Probably
When's the
I would,
when's the ideal time to lay down mag chloride? You know a storm's coming in a couple hours
when
before.
it's fair temperatures, when it's not real cold out.
Or because it'll refreeze.
Yeah, it will refreeze.
Otherwise, it's slicer.
Yeah,
Right.
ice slicer is something I would rather use. And if we build the storage shed, then we can store it because it's basically salt.
No tank.
And it won't be outside in the weather. It'll be inside and
Yeah.
contained in the building.
Slicer won't freeze.
And we can use that in our regular standards.
I
For
say,
the mag chloride, too, people go blame about water quality and killing trees.
and frying our transformers.
Yeah, that's still a problem. I've always wondered if that was a real issue or.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
Very close. Not only transport, I think it was on the porcelain knobs and all kinds of stuff. I was talking with the lines.
So what do we want to do? We want to go ahead and have JVA do a full set of plans and get some kind of cost on this? Or
There would be a fair
Proposal.
amount of surveying that would be needed for this. As John has said, it's very sensitive. We have to really watch the elevations because of the existing sewer, gas, other things out there in the way.
that sewer and gas are in Wall Street, right? It's not on 16th.
Well, no, it's in 16th. Just about where it says Wall Street in there,
Yeah.
just down to your right a little bit is the sewer service line. And then on the left side of the picture, about in there is the gas line.
So both would be right underneath where we want to put these concrete drainage pans, so the elevation that we can set them at is gonna be dictated by where those utilities are at vertically. You can see the width here, we don't have much room.
I don't
If
think
we
you're
can
gonna
get,
get, unless you build retaining walls, you're not gonna get much more width out of that.
And the notion of having just a curb and gutter that has validity, particularly on this side of the road, that curb would provide some additional safety for vehicles not toppling over the retaining wall. We could narrow that up and put a curb and gutter versus the V gutter I suggested. Yeah, I think it would have equal impact with respect to a betterment. I want to get the storm water off of this road into a concrete pan and carry it down the hill.
And would that just dump out in the Colorado Boulevard?
It would come down to eventually the Colorado Boulevard, exactly. There are two inlets that sit just north of Colorado. They come out into the street. And that's where they would be tributary
Okay,
to.
right.
Do you crown that road then a certain direction or?
This road, well, with the curvature, we'd want to slope it this direction, basically to the southwest.
So it adds to that corner. That's the way it, natural turn.
Yeah, the drainage is coming this way now. Most of the water is going to come down the west side of 1116.
Yeah. Would there be any additional problems putting in curb and gutter there with that underground facility there compared to the V?
No, they're about the same thickness,
Are they?
Bob, so they're pretty similar.
But don't you wanna slope it to the south so you get solar on it?
I'm sorry,
Don't you wanna slope it to the south so you get solar on it in the winter?
the roadway?
Yeah.
Oh, well, you know, the entire slope is pretty much south facing. Yeah. There wouldn't be enough angle there that would
Okay.
have much impact. Yeah.
We have some money in our engineering budget, right? Does that need to be an action item on, we can put that on tonight? To give direction to.
If we get direction here, we can get that started, get a proposal from
Let's do that. We're
JDA.
giving you
and bring it
direction
back.
to give us a proposal.
Very good.
Might be good that the public knows that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're not, and that was the whole idea about us having Tracy take a look at this and tell us how, I mean, we've got citizens that are voicing concerns and we should be figuring out some way to make it safer. It just, when we talk about a 7% grade off of the 20+% grade, you know, it's tough to do unless we just took it straight out to I-70 and made another. You leave Wall Street, right on I-70.
So those are the inlets.
Yeah, when you said that, I remember.
All right.
Okay,
Well, thank you. I
This
appreciate it.
actually turned out a little bit
Yeah.
right. It was a-
thanks Tracy for, yeah, and, let's pull something together. And, you, of course, construction costs right now, if we could get somebody to get it done.
We're probably a couple months out before we could bid this. I'd like to think of something that could be done this fall if we chose to. Survey time wise, I'm probably looking at least a month to get somebody out and do that portion of the work. And then once we have that information, we probably get the plans together in 2 to 3 weeks.
That'd be great.
Everybody's good with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right,
We
thank
will
you.
have the proposal though for your next council meeting, so there'll be that lag time.
All right, thanks Tracy, good work.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move on. Okay, Lorraine, step on up. A couple of weeks ago, might have been 3 weeks ago, we had to ask Lorraine if she might, we postponed her financial update because somebody took our work session, was it work session or executive session way out into the, oh, Carmen's laughing.
Executive session.
Well, hopefully our position financially didn't deteriorate.
No, hopefully not.
Okay,
Thank you, Mayor. We have a little more time tonight to go through these financial statements than we have at most of your meetings where I've just gone rapid fire through some highlights. So, just wanted to take a chance tonight, since we've got 6 months kind of in the books. And we've got some preliminary figures for year end of 2020. We don't have the audit draft quite yet, but soon we will be receiving that. To look at where we are midway through 2021. And this will kind of be a springboard into the budget discussions that will start in the next couple of months. And you'll have your budget probably in October. So the budget forms are going to be going out to the department heads in the next week or so. And so everyone's thoughts get to turn to budget for a while pretty soon here. So please go ahead and interrupt me as we go if you'd like. I've got a hard copy if you have one, or you can use, it's in the packet. I'll be walking through it. So on this first page, as I've mentioned in the past, is your combined cash. And it shows all the different bank accounts that the city has in combined cash. And then of the $7,510,000 total, it shows which funds own how much of that, or which funds owe to that fund. So they might have another bank account of their own, and a bill got paid by these combined cash general operating fund, and so that would be why there'd be some owing, where you're waiting for the water and power authority to send money over, something like that. So the amounts on the bottom half of this page are their starting figures in each fund's balance sheet of what their cash is. So the first one there is highlighted, $1,764,000 in the general fund. So turning to page 2, that is the first figure on the general fund balance sheet. And we don't usually spend a lot of time on the balance sheet. It shows how everything, the revenues and expenditures over time have accumulated. Your revenues and expenditures are just tracked year to year, total revenues this year, total expenditures this year. But the results of that turn into your balance sheet items, as to how much cash do you have left and who do you still have to pay bills to and that type of thing. So your assets and liabilities here are looking good because you've got $2,228,000 in assets and you owe $245,000. And it shows down below where it's highlighted that is what 2020 ended with. So 2020 ended with $1,820,000, and again, it's unaudited, but pretty close, we think. And so far through June, this next figure is what the current year-to-date revenues are over your expenditures. So you start the year with $1,820,000. You've got revenues coming in ahead of expenditures so far during the year of $162,652. And that brings your total fund equity to $1,963,000 at the end of June. I want to take a look at that highlighted fund balance, and that's $1,820,000, and have you flip forward to 2 different pages. One is page 4. The bottom figure on page 4 is your total fund revenues through June. If you look down on the budget column, you see that there's $2,587,000 in revenues forecast for the year. So that $1,008,000 that was on page 2 represents about 70% of an annual year's revenue budget in the general fund. And that's one of the items to keep in mind in budgeting is how much of your reserves do you want to keep or build up so that you could supplant missing revenues if you ever had a disaster. So right now, you're at $1,008,000. An annual budgeted revenues in this fund was $2,500,000, so you're not quite at a full year. So again, as I've mentioned in the past, the smaller your city is and the more concentrated your tax base, the more you want to have it in fund balances in case something goes wrong. Because unlike Lakewood, when it lost those mills, the Colorado mills, they had other places in town that weren't destroyed. But one event here could take out a lot really fast. And
We
so
have a policy within our,
we do.
and how much is that?
Oh, do you remember, Andy? Oh, 6 months?
Is it 6 months?
Well, 20%, I think it goes on percentage.
Oh, 20%. So we may want to look at that and see if it needs to be increased or if you want to gradually build that up. And again, there's best of all worlds and there's what's realistic to what you have to do. And there's aid that would come your way if something terrible went wrong, but nevertheless, that's a consideration, is how high should you.
What if COVID
fund
comes
balance
and
be?
shuts down all of our businesses and we don't have any sales tax anymore? I mean,
Look what happens, yeah.
You know, just thinking, previous administration, the council I was on, we did a survey. And roughly 50% of our sales tax came from the East End businesses, 30% downtown. And a surprising 20% came from others, which, you know, Indian Springs and the ones in the West End. And so on. So I don't, that division's probably changed some, but that's what it was then.
Yeah, well, and with the lockdown last year, people started ordering a lot more online, so that other category is gonna go up, because those online sales aren't from the retailers. So,
And our sales tax wasn't affected that much.
Right.
and we found that, I found it with our other clients around the state that are smaller cities or towns where people used to go shop in a neighboring city and stayed home and ordered instead, that there's, the smaller town did fine and the neighboring city got hurt during the lockdown. So, look also at page 12, and that's the other thing I want to compare to that fund balance, is the total expenditures that are highlighted there in your budget is $3,074,000. So your total fund balance is about 60% of that. So you could make it through a year, about 60% of your expenditures with your fund balance if you had to. And then also look at the bottom line that's beneath the highlight on page 12 in the budget column. You budgeted to draw down your fund balance for 2021 because of needed items and projects, et cetera, by $487,000. So far, the period to date actual is $180,000. You haven't drawn it down. Your revenues over expenditures of $180,000. But the front half of the year almost always looks better because you get most of your property taxes then. Second half of the year, you don't get very many more. And you start having those summer projects start up in June, July, August, September, October that have some expenses attached as well. One of the things we're going to do this year in the budget process is really focus on the estimated actuals and say, okay, here's your budget. That was the best guess last year in the summer and fall for what's been happening now. Now we have a better best guess, and all the department heads will have a column on their form saying, what's your estimated actual by line item that you think we'll spend by the end of the year, now that you're this far into it. And we'll keep updating that as we get nearer to the end of the year. So that's going to help us determine what we think the starting fund balance will be for next year. Because this year we'll start with this $1.8 million or whatever it turns out to be after the audit. We'll add those estimated actual revenues and subtract the estimated actual expenditures to see what we think the beginning balance will be for 2022. Just going through page 3, we've got these 10 major revenues highlighted. And I usually use the percentage column off to the right to see how well they're coming in compared to what was forecast. So the first one, property taxes, is at 73%. And as I mentioned, you get most of those through July, actually. So July will have more, probably the last quarter or most of it. But then property taxes will be done. But the other ones, sales tax is at 51% of what was budgeted. Building use tax, 59% of what was budgeted. You know, franchise fees, 62%. Building permits is down, but maybe that'll pick up more in the late summer and fall. Your marijuana sales tax, county road and bridge, and highway users are, fairly close to 50%. So your major revenues look pretty good, with the exception of the building permits, and it was only budgeted at $75,000, so it's not your biggest revenue. It's not like sales tax is only at 31%. It's a smaller revenue that's at lower percentage. Your fines, that's a larger budget on the next page 4. Top line there on page 4 you're at 21%. And your leases are coming in as expected. So overall, the general fund revenues are at 65% of what was budgeted through 6 months. That finishes with the revenues. The departmental budgets are all laid out. And hopefully these line items are reviewed each month by the department heads, see if there's going to be a problem or if things are on track. We always recommend people charge their actual expenses to the most appropriate line item, even if that's not where the funds were budgeted, because that helps you see where you are spending them and how to better budget next time. And it shows the transparency of where you're really spending them. You're supposed to show where you actually spend them, not what your forecast was many months ago. And often I'll drop down to just the total by department here to see how they're all, roughly around 50% or less, unless they have some big items that happen in the beginning of the year. You had the miscellaneous organizational requests on page 8 for helping people with the CARES Act funds. It's the 6th line item down. That's shown at 82%. Because you didn't know what to budget for that at the time and ended up giving out 41,000 in those requests. The leases is slightly over 50%, really close, and same with court and the fire. So on page 10, oops, I didn't mean 10, I meant to go to the end. Page 12, total expenditures are highlighted, and they're just almost snacked out at 50% for the year, 49.6. So I think this shows you had some good budgeting, and you're watching your budgets, and you're staying pretty close to what was expected to be spent, despite differences in revenues that are harder to forecast. This next fund is a trust fund, Hanson Cemetery on page 13. And that means this money is something that the city's in charge of, but it's not available for the city to spend. So often you'll see this with cemeteries where there's something put aside for a certain reason. The city is the logical person to oversee that, or entity to oversee that. And that's the case of this fund. There's not that much there. But the fund on page 15 actually is part of the city. It's your cemetery operations, as it were. It has 101,000 in cash and a fund balance of that amount. And on the next page shows your interest, which is paltry in this economy. And your line item on page 17 that could be used for rehab projects or for maintenance or other items. And in your audit, this is reported as part of the general fund. So we've talked about rolling it into the general fund so it doesn't have its own 3 pages for that moving forward. Page 18 is your ramp fund, and this one is the monies that were given when you took over or were asked to take over Colorado Boulevard's maintenance. And this will gradually be drawn down until there's nothing left, unless you use the fund continually to put more sources of revenue in there for Colorado Boulevard. You had about 750,000 at the end of 2020. That's highlighted on the fund balance. A little interest comes in, and then over on the budget, you had budgeted 50,000 to spend in 2021, and none has been spent so far. Page 21, I want to spend some time on. This is your 1% sales tax improvement fund. And this is a really great revenue source that you've got coming in for improvements. Unfortunately, you've got a lot of draws or wish lists of how to spend it. And we want to keep our eyes on this. If you look at this balance sheet, it's showing total assets of 5.2 million. You see that figure there. But cash is 2.4. because those bottom three line items are receivables that have, of money due back from the water and wastewater funds. And in 2005, there was 77,000 given to the wastewater fund. In 2018, there was 566,000 advanced. 2019 at 2,054,000. And the figure we're waiting on with this audit is what's going to be needed for 2020. And that might be another $1 million figure. And initially, I think the reasons were that there were revenues going to come in from grants and loans. But you have to pay the bills first and then submit for reimbursement. And so there was a cash need. And so advances were put forth from this fund that had some cash, pay those bills, and the wastewater fund is supposed to fork it back over as soon as they get their grants or money from their loans.
So this is just enterprise, or you got general in there too?
This one, page 21, is a special revenue fund of the 1% sales tax. But those
Oh,
three,
1%, okay.
yeah, those improvement fund, it's called, I'm trying to change the name to the 1% sales tax improvement fund. But those three line items there show that money belonging to this fund hasn't been paid back yet from wastewater fund. And that cramps the style of this fund as to what it can do with those monies. And there's lots of ideas and needs for those monies. So that's going to be a real important element of the audit when we get it, is to how much more needs to be given over to the wastewater fund, or if some can be paid back and this can be reduced.
Are these guaranteed to be paid back?
Well, there's,
Do we borrow based on, we hope they're gonna be paid back?
they must be paid back unless we decide it was a gift. At some point, if the wastewater fund never has enough revenue to pay it back and has expenses that use all they have, then there may be a decision point where the city has to say, we have to reclassify these and we can't claim that they are advances anymore because we're never getting them back.
Which would reduce the total assets under that category.
Right, then it would be a transfer out of improvement fund, transfer into the wastewater fund. And
Mike, don't we do that maximum 10% now?
10%,
I think we can't bump that anymore there.
We're putting 10% into the water and wastewater funds?
Yeah,
more than,
Well,
based on that budget size, and I don't think we can go any further. We've done it for years.
are you talking about the enterprise fund status
Yeah,
being
enterprise
compromised?
funds. Is that
So
different?
you can compromise that status and you can still run the fund as an enterprise here, but just if you're going to apply the Tabor requirements to it, it's no longer exempt under Tabor as an enterprise if it gets more than 10% from non-federal sources. So it can, but some places run airports, for instance, as an enterprise, but they never make enough money. And if they were going to issue bonds, they would have to go to a vote. And that's the main thing. It's two things that the Tabor, loss of that status will impact. One is how much of a reserve you have to have. Tabor requires 3% for everything that's not an enterprise.
Okay.
And then if you're going to go issue debt, enterprises can do it without going to a vote.
Right. I would call that. Taking advantage of that more than once.
Yeah, and it kind of goes year by year too. So there's times when you can make it qualify this year because you don't give general revenues over 10%, and it can go to be an enterprise in that year. And then this piece, the way the legislation and now the Constitution is written, there's ways to get it's a year by year thing, so you can dance around it sometimes. Yeah.
You use the word we can, yes, is that what you said?
Yes, gift or transfer
I would
out.
like to get my name on that list.
Yeah. Yeah, well, whenever we use the word transfer in governmental accounting, it means give and never expect back. When you use loan, it means you loan it and there's some time period of expectation for giving it back. When you use advance, it means, oh, you're getting paid Friday, here's an advance, your allowance until then, and you gotta pay me back. So these are booked as allowance as advances, and yet they're getting kind of old and they haven't been returned. So there's a point here where we're gonna have to either get it back, convert them to loans, or say it's a transfer.
Yeah.
And in that case, we'd have to see if the uses in those funds meet the, the ballot language of how this 1% sales tax was approved. You can't just give it to any old fund for any old reason. It has to meet the improvement definitions that were in the ballot language. And probably with those water and wastewater projects, they would, but we'd have to make sure. So moving on to the next page, you see the revenues come in. And this fund is a good little cheat sheet of what does 1% sales tax bring in. And over there in the budget, you see the nice round $750,000. That's a good working number. Again, the economy being what it is, and the COVID and potential for lockdowns and changes can mess with that, but that's been a generally good working number is what this 1% sales tax bring in here. And so far for the year, you've brought in more than half of that. Just like 50.9%. But you see your expenditures over here, these year-to-date and budget columns. You see you've got engineering and different projects of different sizes, some only 10,000, some 500,000. So you've got a lot of general improvements expected to be paid for in advance. Finance, I should say, in this fund. Moving on to the next one is Conservation Trust Fund. We can go a little more quickly here. It has $70,000 in it at the end of 2020. It gets about $10,000 a year from the lottery proceeds that are shared by the state, cities and towns. A little bit of interest, and you have $10,000 in budgeted here in case you need it for some kind of project. You can use these funds for parks purposes, certain recreation purposes if they're capital based, like a rec center, but not a rec program. So it has to be for pretty much capital improvements or park maintenance or trails or trail maintenance or recreation buildings or features. The street sales tax fund, 1% again, had $1.5 million in the fund balance at the end of 2020. Again, you get about $750,000 a year, about half of which has come in already. And you have $695,000 budgeted for this year, 429,000 of which has been spent already on the interest payment on your bonds. You use those bond proceeds to accomplish a lot when you first issued the bonds. You have some more bonding capacity that hasn't been used. But you can also use the sales tax to pay out those bonds and do additional projects, which is essentially what you've contemplated. Now this last half, from page 30 to the end, is almost all water and wastewater. And we've talked a time or two about how when you run an enterprise in governmental accounting, you have to show all your expenses in one fund for that enterprise, at least in your annual financial statements. You can split them out for reasons like you've done here where you kept the CIP separate to show that, but it's kind of drifted off track. And so I think bringing it back into one fund would make it a lot easier to see where you are financially in this fund. Because each time I give the presentation, I say, oh, you see that cash here? We'll keep that in mind because there's going to be a big negative number on the other page. We just merge those together. I think it'll be better. And we're going to take a look at doing that during the budget process and we'll make sure it makes sense for us, but that's kind of the thought at this point. So your water fund has assets of 6.674 million. And most of those are in your improvements, in your infrastructure. That 13 million of those minus accumulated depreciation comes to roughly 5 million of that 6.674. And that's typical for our water enterprise fund. Most of your assets and your net position is going to be accounted for based on your improvements you've made over the years, your capital plan and infrastructure. You have notes payable. Your biggest numbers on the liabilities are dealing with your debt service. All the six-figure numbers are your debt service. Pay back the loans and notes that have helped you build those capital plans and infrastructure. And your fund equity total is 5.5 million. So that water fund actually is looking pretty good on these pages here. Your charges for services on the next page, you're right about 50%. Halfway through the year, that's good. And then you have some additional minor revenues there and some leases that are coming in. Your operation expenses and distribution and debt service are all right around the total on the bottom of page 33, right near 50% through the end of June. But let's, before we go to wastewater, find that water CIP fund. It's on page 43. So the right hand needs to know what the left hand is doing when you've got these two funds like this. So the left hand on page 30 had 931,000 in cash. The right hand over here on page 43 is minus 75,000 in cash. So you're still in a positive cash position, but it's not as good as it looked over on page 30. It's page 43 as a minus. Same with the fund equity. Page 30 had 5,566,000. You got to subtract 75,000 from page 43 to combine these. 2021 on page the year 2021 doesn't have any major revenues budgeted for CIP coming in on page 44. And we've got upgrades of about 310,000 that have been budgeted. And so far about 65% of those have occurred. So the year-to-date actual revenues over expenditures here, bottom line of the year-to-date actual on page 45, minus 201,000. It's subtracted from what your operating year-to-date actual was on page 34. Here you had a year-to-date actual of 66,000. And you got minus 201,000 over here. So that's why it would be better to blend these together. You can't hide the bad news.
Yeah, but doesn't certain loans make you split out the two?
No,
No? Okay.
there's certain things you have to keep track of if you have loan covenants, but generally it's your general revenues, and those are in one place.
Well, trying to spend on the lane, the contract.
Could you say that again? I didn't catch the first part of it.
I know when I did this stuff, they made me take it, do it separate because I had to have 3 months of operating expenses, prove it all the time.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
And we show that in the back of the audit though. They show a separate table that shows that the rate covenants were met without having separate funds do it.
Yeah.
I think that would be more useful going forward.
All right.
Now let's look back to Fund 35. This is going to be wastewater, and here that's the first part, and the second part of wastewater starts on page 46. So kind of keep them open. In fact, if you have your hard copies and you can look at both of those pages or flip back and forth, it'll be useful. This page 35 shows cash of 3,681,000 at the first line item on page 35. Page 46, the first line item is minus 3,540,000. So that's why there's not much money showing in your cash accounts. You do have a fair amount of money still showing with cash with fiscal agent. But again, that was at the end of this is so far through June, 1,127 still with them. So if that money comes forward and you've already spent it, that's going to be money available to do some of that payback of the advances. But if you have already received everything that's due, and that's waiting for more expenditures to occur, then that won't cover it, and it won't cover the amount that's already been advanced. As we said, well, over 2 million, and there might be more that's needed. Back on page 35, again, you see most of the value of your enterprise fund is your investment in capital assets minus depreciation. So you've got construction in progress of 8,000,006, land of 616,000, improvements over 10 million, and accumulated depreciation of 6 million. So you've got 12 million of your net position is your investment in those capital assets. But then you have to subtract out all these big numbers in the liabilities that are still owed on those loans. Let's just focus on revenues now for a while. Page 37 is your budget. And again, your charges for services are coming in as planned. They're right at 50% halfway through the year. And your expenditures on page 39, total that's highlighted there, they're at 41%. So you've got net revenues over expenditures in this first part of the fund of over 119,000 so far. When we go back to the end, we look at page 47. You probably won't have much coming in grants because a lot of that was received in prior years, but you may, so that could really help getting more grant money. And then page 48, your expenditures for the year of 693,000 so far, but you've got net revenue or loss really of expenditures are higher than revenues of 694,000. So that depletes that 119,000 that we had in the first part of the fund. So those are going to be the things that we're looking at as we go into the budget, is where these monies are coming from, what revenues you need from your rate study you're having done for the water and wastewater funds, whether increased rates will be recommended and adopted and received, improve the health of the fund. If you're going to go for an election for any kind of rate increases that are general revenues, what you're going to be doing here to get this money paid back, get these loans paid off, get the project built that you need, and what additional projects such as the line to the treatment plant that are going to be needed starting in 2022 or sometime thereafter. The last fund is your police pension fund, and it's a trust fund also. These monies have already been paid to the or are due to the employee, and the city is just the logical one to keep track of these funds that are put aside for future pension benefits that will be paid to the employee. One of the things that we're starting to do for the budget is take the 5-year plan that you had as a list before and put it into a long-range plan as to what revenue sources from all these different funds can be available for those projects. So it's a great step having the list of what you're going to need, but attaching potential revenues and fund balances to those projects to see where you come out on the bottom line is the next step that this budget process will kind of provide. And that way you'll know, can the timing be what we thought? Can we speed this one up? Can we slow that one down? Are these 1% sales tax funds available for this or no, just for that? So, to really drop those categories of monies and expenditures into view to see where you're trending for the next 5 years and getting things done. I always feel like I've thrown too much information out, it's not everyone's cup of tea, I know. So I appreciate your interest and your attention. I'm happy to answer any questions now or anytime afterwards.
Any questions?
I do. I was looking, and I've been looking all year, for where I would look to find any monies that were paid back to us from developers that, owe us money.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I went to, I don't know if I went to, where did I go? I went to, page 4, and I thought maybe that's why I should be looking. But is that, am I in the right area for that?
Well, we're kind of in betwixt and between. And in fact, I was working with Wonder a little bit on this today. You have a system for accounts receivable that's a fairly new component of your bookkeeping system.
Right.
It's kind of being used and not optimally. And so we're working to improve that and have a better, more transparent place for you to find that on here.
Right.
But it's going to be on page 2. And essentially, as soon as, and Wonder has kept some really good spreadsheets over the years of what each developer has paid. There's certain things that they pay you as a revenue that you keep. There's other things that are their responsibility that you bill them for and get paid back. Some of them have deposits up front. Maybe they're sufficient, maybe they aren't. And we're going through those spreadsheets, tying them to the bookkeeping system and trying to get them to all balance out. So that the 2 line items you'd be looking at are going to be the 4th one down, AR, accounts receivable, billed accounts. And if that's showing a negative, which it is, it's showing that they don't owe you, that you've got deposits from developers more than what they owe you for what you've billed to them so far. So we're double checking all those spreadsheets to see if the system includes what they owe or if there's things that haven't
Did you
been
say
billed.
page 2? Where are we at the top?
Page 2 at the top, the 4th line down, accounts receivable, billed accounts.
1150.
Yeah, 10/00/11/50. And then an additional one that might be, we may have a liability at the bottom where it says developer liabilities.
Right.
And again, that is showing as a negative number instead of a positive. So
Right.
if it shows they've overpaid it, that they've paid these deposits and they haven't had their billings go against them. So we're working through those and we're gonna go with developer by developer. And soon, maybe for July's financial reports, maybe not, depending on how much audit work there is between. But soon we'll have a very clear way to see that on here and an accounts receivable by developer report that'll tie to it.
This right now, those 2 line items have spreadsheets for them, each of those line items, right?
They do have spreadsheets. They don't necessarily tie to this because this came from the bookkeeping system. So it's a project that we're working on.
So page 43680 shows 100% return. Is that reimbursements for that?
No.
What page is that on?
So page 4.
Page 4. 3680.
Yeah, where it says lease rent is highlighted underneath that.
Okay.
Reimbursements/refunds revenues. I believe this is grant money that's coming in.
Does that be the ARP, the American Rescue Plan,
ARP.
first tranche?
That was 240,000, wasn't it?
No, but this, I'll find out and
No, we'll find out.
let you know. But once we get that accounts receivable by developer report working, then we can include that with these whenever you want it.
You think that in the next couple of months?
Yes.
All right, any final questions for Lorraine? Thanks again, Lorraine, for coming in and walking us through this. This is probably the most detailed. So really appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
All right,
Thanks,
let's
Lorraine.
see, council, we have just a couple of more items and we've got about 5 minutes to get done. Andy, real quick, but
Real quick, there's a budget schedule for the preparation of the fiscal year 2022 budget. It's in your packet, and I'll leave it at that. Just take a look at that, and we'll be talking more in upcoming meetings about the budget.
okay, the next are 3 items that we're gonna have for adoption on our regular meeting tonight. Is there anything in there that anybody, council needs clarification of what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it?
Mayor,
Yes.
hi, it's the eye in the sky.
Tom?
I mentioned this to you, Mayor and Council, but ordinance number 13 has really been sort of swallowed up and superseded by ordinance number 14. Mayor will note that for you when you begin your agenda tonight. It's really ordinances number 12 that's the first one that you have, both in your study session and on your regular meeting. It's really ordinances number 12 and 14 that you will be considering, and my apologies. Ordinance 12 is really sort of an earlier draft of what, I'm sorry, ordinance 13 was really a draft of what morphed into ordinance 14. So I apologize for the confusion on that, Mayor and Council.
We're scratching 13.
Yeah, I'll make that amendment when we get to the agenda approval tonight. Thank you, Carmen. Okay, anything else, council? All right, good work session. Give you 3 minutes. What is that is said to go? What was that was being used, Carmen, to?
It's a comfort break, Mayor, a comfort break.
Comfort break. There you go. 2.5 minutes.
Restrooms are closed.
Very PG.
It's
To the general public. I know. That's what smoke comes in here.
I'll be thinking I have to have to all the way home.
Downstairs, the bathrooms downstairs too.
All right, there you go.
Thank you, everyone. I'm gonna excuse myself.
Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you, Tracy.
Yeah, I asked her about it yesterday. She says, the worker.
Mayor.
Yes, please. Some on those. Yeah. I got it. Yeah. We just did that, like, we wanted to. No, he did. He did.
Yeah.
Every time you get some of the thoughts here.
Everyone, if you're here for public comment, there's a sign up sheet over here that you all want to fill out.
Yeah. Yeah, just never. I thought about you, last night, too, we got.
You clearly met my wife before. I duck elbows all the time. Like, do you not see? I have the same problem with my husband. Oh my gosh, every 6. It's the long roses.
Need more, Andy? I think that'll probably, maybe one right here. I can do it. You got it. Someone got to do it.
No, it's safer, I'm telling you.
Right there. There you go.
And
Yeah. We do. It's a very good.
Yeah.
We're waiting on our city administrator, and we'll get going. I'm only gonna give him a minute. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started, and you'll be in here in a minute. Thanks, everybody, for your attendance tonight. A little bit better than our last time. We spent an hour over with our executive session, so thank you. It is 7:05 on July 26, 2021. This is the Idaho Springs City Council regular meeting. Can I have roll call, please?
Michael Hillman.
Here.
Scott Pennell.
Here.
Jeff Harmon.
Here.
Art Boland.
Here.
John Curtis.
Here.
Art Cacavelli.
Here.
Jim Clark.
Here. Okay, please stand with us for the pledge of allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. We have an agenda in front of us tonight. One thing council will be tabling tonight, or not including, because it was morphed into another resolution, another ordinance, is ordinance number 13. So we can X that off of our list tonight. And I believe that's the only changes we have. So can I have a motion for the agenda approval, please?
Mayor, I have one other slight change, and that is resolution number 8, series 2021. This is regarding 1628 Virginia Street, a slight typo in the second whereas. It's got 1628-9. So we'll strike the 9.
making it 1628. But I'd like to approve the agenda for the July 26, 2021 meeting as amended.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion. Without any, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any not approved? Okay, does anybody on council feel they have a conflict of interest tonight? Okay, and none, can we have a motion for the approval of the minutes?
I'll move to approve the minutes from July 12th, 2021.
And a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion. Anybody find anything in there that's not true and incorrect, or we need to change?
Good.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we will move down to our bills. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve bills to July 12th, 2021.
About a second.
Second.
And I've got Scott second. Discussion. Any questions on the bills or needing some clarification? Come on, Art.
No,
Nothing?
nothing tonight.
Scott or John? All right, if nothing, can I have roll call, please?
Michael Hillman,
Yes.
Scott Pennell,
Yes.
Jeff Harmon.
Yes.
Bob Boland,
Yes.
John Curtis,
Yes.
Art Pizzale,
Yes.
Jim Clark.
Yes. All right, our next item on our agenda tonight is a proclamation in the audience and council. If you don't know, we have an ex Clear Creek High School student that had a full ride scholarship to Penn State. Her name's Haley Washington. She got her full ride for being an outstanding volleyball player. And Haley has made it to our Olympic team. So she's representing not only the US, but Clear Creek County and Idaho Springs. So what we did for her, a few things. One, Angie Tennis and others around the community have been pulling banners together to put up. We really want to show our support. It's not very often that we have one of our own that has made it to an Olympics like this. So we're going to pump it up. I believe tonight at 8 o'clock. So if you want me to kind of hurry, there's a watch party over at the Moose, and I believe that the local media, well, Channel 9, what is Matt renewed? Channel 9 Media is supposed to be there, kind of covering it. So that's really cool. So what we did a proclamation for Haley, and I'll read it real fast. It says, the 32nd Summer Olympic Games are scheduled to occur July 23rd through August 8, 2021 in Tokyo, Japan. And Idaho Springs' native Haley Washington is representing Team USA as a starter on the women's volleyball team. And Haley Washington began and perfected her craft playing volleyball for Clear Creek Middle and High School. And Haley Washington is competing on the world stage, demonstrating her skill and the strength of Clear Creek County School District athletic programs. And the residents of Idaho Springs would like to wish her good health and success as she represents Team USA in Tokyo. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Idaho Springs City Council hereby recognizes Haley Washington for her exemplary volleyball career and supports her as she competes in the Tokyo and beyond. Tokyo, we left out a word, Tokyo Olympics and beyond. I hereunto set my hand on behalf of the City Council and cause to be affixed the official seal of Idaho Springs, Colorado, this 26th day of July, 2021. Let's give a round of applause. Okay, we will move down and we have some scheduled public comment. First, we're going to hear from Walter Cass. Walter? If you just state your name and where you reside, please.
I'm Walter Cass, 1600 Wall Street. Mayor Hillman, Council, thank you for allowing me and all of us in the community to speak tonight. This is a legacy decision. Habitat is a Christian organization. Its mission, seeking to put God's love into action. Habitat for Humanity brings people together to build homes, communities, and hope. When you place yourself in an existing community, You must engage that community on their terms, not yours. Otherwise, you won't build homes, you'll build resentment. Our family has owned this property for 60 years. We have some of our neighbors bringing pictures to show you what happened with the view. That's the least of our worries. All of us have expressed support for Habitat, but we've expressed a support for a more modest plan. With COVID, we came up here in February of 2020. And Rick has a list of all the concerns that were listed. Safety, the hill, all the things that we bring up right now. They weren't resolved. So as we go forward and you look at it, just to recap right now, the Habitat plan for our community, it was thought to be too high, too dense, too unsafe, and it was voted down. Now we're going back and the plan is unchanged to my knowledge. So it needs to be voted down again to send a message. Work with your community. Help us help you. That's the goal that we have. So the community's spoken, and I have to tell you that the council members who voted no, in my opinion, are very courageous. We'll support you because it's the right thing to do. So we all want to do the right thing with Habitat. We're hoping that they'll come and listen, come up with something more modest, but you can't put the plan across the way it stands right now. The danger factor is too important to our community, to the neighbors, to everything that we stand for. And our community stands together, and we have a lot of people that will speak tonight to show you that. So my hope is that as you look through this plan, if there's no change and there's no community involvement, there should be no approval for this plan. We'll go back to the very genesis of our concerns, and we'll bring those up. Rick will, and they'll be on the list. They're there for everyone to see if you want to go back and look for them yourself. The ultimate goal, though, is to work together. At our last meeting, George Marlin told you that his grandmother broke her wrist when she was going down 16th and Wall Street. It was that slippery. He also said his brother ran into the Elks Club fence. George said that we have a housing crisis. Let's not make this a safety crisis as well, because that's what we all believe in. Let's make it our legacy as a community, not just a driven legacy off an agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cass. Rick, Scott?
If it gets any hotter here, I'm gonna have to get a haircut next time. Rick Scott, 1548 Wall Street. I've been here since 1978. Today, we have to weigh affordable housing at this site against the safety of affected residents and their families, who have no other choice than to drive Wall Street down 16th and through the intersection. Habitat can build elsewhere, but we have no other choice but to drive that road. We realize that a lot of time, effort, and money has gone into this project, and we all agree Idaho Springs needs affordable housing, and we do. But this site is not the place to build it. These are serious concerns we brought up to the attention of everyone involved, and so far they have not been addressed. It's hard to believe that with all the input from surrounding residents regarding safety concerns, that Habitat would still want to build here at that site without any negotiating or possible solutions to what will become a blind intersection. I'm asking you to postpone this vote until the city's engineers can do a study or a feasibility plan in regards to Wall Street, 16th, and the intersection of 16th and Virginia, to make this a safe drive for all. Before you can diligently cast your vote, you have to have all the information and input needed to be fully aware and informed about what the limited choices can be. This decision will affect us for the next 100 years. What if the engineering study comes back and says that site is needed, the only place that we can improve Wall Street or 16th Street, and there's something already built on there? Then what? We got to wait for the study. This isn't asking for much. As citizens of Idaho Springs, we deserve this. On behalf of the affected citizens, please do the right thing and do not approve this project the way it is right now. It's dangerous to your citizens. As far as I know, there's been no input from the city's engineers regarding
improving the safety of these roads. And it's inconsiderate to all affected residents and their families to vote on this tonight without that input. Myself and Scott took some videos this weekend and last weekend of cars making U-turns at the intersection of 16th and Virginia. I don't know why they're turning north on 16th off Colorado Boulevard, but they all are. And it takes them a long time to turn around there, and it's just dangerous there too. We the people, this country was built on, founded on we the people. We the people have spoken. We don't go to other towns and make already dangerous intersections more dangerous. We wouldn't think of it. We don't go into other towns and build structures that block our neighbors' views. We wouldn't think of it. We wouldn't go to other towns and not listen to their concerns over safety for their families. We wouldn't think of it. This is our neighborhood, not theirs. We wouldn't go to their neighborhood and do to them what they're trying to do to us. We wouldn't think of it. What Scott was talking about, what Habitat had on their 2020 February 4th meeting, they had questions about putting a barrier right at the northwest quadrant of their building so people wouldn't slide into their buildings. Talking about ice and shade, discussion on regarding height blocking views. The city needs to put in sidewalks along Virginia Street. The kids will be playing in the street. These are all valid concerns, and I hope you listen to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Next, I have Kathleen O'Leary.
Good evening. I'm Kathleen O'Leary, Executive Director for Blue Spruce Habitat for Humanity, 1520 Evergreen Parkway, Evergreen, Colorado, 80439. And I'm not here to testify because it's not a public hearing, so I'm not going to talk about the application that we have in front of you. But as we've been listening to folks, I've heard some confusion around our house pricing policy and whether it's affordable. So I thought I would address that. And I want to let you know that if at some point in the future, you guys want me to come and do a presentation to you about our program, I'd love to do that. Let me tell you what Habitat's about. We do great work across the world, have helped millions of people. I'm very proud to be associated with this organization. So our house pricing policy. Our sales price is based on the appraised value of the home. Now, we expect that these houses, the 2 bedrooms, are going to appraise at $350,000, which is crazy. And we are serving people who are between 35 and 80% of the area median income. So for a family of 4, 31,000 to 79,000. I don't expect that a family that's making 31,000 is going to be able to afford $350,000. So how do we get that? How do we make this work? We put a first mortgage in place that is based on what the family can afford to pay. So if a family is making $40,000 and they can afford a $250,000 mortgage at 1% interest over 38 years, then that's their first mortgage amount. And that's what they're paying on. So that way it's always affordable to them. They can always afford it. That's what we do. So you're like, well, the house appraised for $350,000. So what does that mean? Well, we have a second mortgage in there that's forgiven over 20 years for that $100,000. And if the family stays in the house for 20 years, that equity is theirs. And we do that because we want to get equity into these families' pockets. We want them to have this as affordable housing, but we also want to provide them with prosperity. We want to see that for these families, and that's what we're about. So that's how we price it. We're very intentional that we keep it affordable for the families at the lower end of our income range. That's what we want to do. We have a wait staff and man who's a wait staff who lives in Empire. We have 3 teachers living in Empire. We have a seasonal employee who's just been approved for a house in Empire. These are the workers here in this community that we are housing. So I just wanted to clarify that for you. And if you want me to do a further presentation about why we do, how we do things, I am happy to do that at a later time. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. Okay, do I have any unscheduled public comment? Thank you. Okay, we have Christina Weinke.
She's on Zoom.
Okay. Hi, Christina.
Mayor,
State your name, where you reside, and you have 3 minutes.
all right, my name is Christina Winke, and I reside at 1606 Wall Street, Idaho Springs, Colorado, 80452. I'm here to comment on the Habitat for Humanity. And So live one day at my house and you will immediately see for yourself, this is a project that has blatant safety impact on the busiest section of town. Trust me, in all ways, shapes, and angles, this is not going to be bettering our community as it's proposed now. I'm urging you to delay this vote to hire a non-biased professional to assess the building proposed and the structure and its effects on us. Habitat says that they're a Christian community-based program. I'm Christian, I'm community-based, and I want affordable housing, but I don't feel as if our concerns are getting taken into consideration, which leaves out the community. I don't feel that the safety concerns are going to better those families if an incident happens. All I keep hearing from Habitat that this is not their issue, this is not their problem, it's for the city of Idaho Springs. So that's why I urge you guys right now to make sure that you take control of this situation before it gets caught up into a worst scenario. Vehicular manslaughter, severe injury, personal lawsuit, these are things that now are part of my daily thought. And when that building is built, those will be thoughts that people won't even understand they're supposed to be having at that intersection. It's an extremely unique situation, and shame on Habitat for not wanting to make this project perfect. Perfect in a way where everybody is safe in the community and everybody profits, everybody is uplifted. What price do we put on somebody's head? And why are we putting a lawsuit where there's a lawsuit threat where there's a blatant safety concern? That just doesn't seem like the Christian part of Habitat for Humanity for me. That seems like it's more about Habitat for money for me. I would also like to state on the record that this building structure will become a serious and personal liability to anybody involved. Tourists, children, people walking their dogs, anybody involved. I think that in previous notes in city council, I was just stated as saying children, but this is a severe threat to everybody in the community. There's public transportation within our county. There's plenty of ways for people to get about our county. Us as taxpayers, we pay for that program. We put it in place. You guys have worked very hard to get that sort of program. It's wonderful that such a remote town has stuff like that. There's plenty of space in Clear Creek County. This, just because we don't go with 8 units and maybe we go with a smaller amount of units, doesn't mean that there's not any more space in Clear Creek County to expand on this. She was saying all these people in Empire housed, I drive past those houses all the time. They look great. They look like they have people that can enjoy their yard. There's space for cars and pedestrians alike. And it's away from the dangerous intersection.
Okay, thank you, Christina. Your 3 minutes is up. Thank
Okay,
you.
I'm sorry I didn't hear the timer. Thank you, guys.
Yep. Okay, I have Walker Lee Pike.
Also on Zoom this evening.
Okay.
Hi, my name's Walker. I live up in Georgetown. Sorry, there. Hopefully that video is on. I live up in Georgetown at 1960 Argentine Street, and I've been out in Clear Creek for 8 years now, and I just sort of wanted to comment and encourage kind of more affordable housing in this area. Since I've been here, even in that relatively short amount of time, I've seen housing prices increase and rent costs increase, and it becomes harder and harder and harder for kind of the more seasonal employee around here to find housing up in this area. And I think that especially becomes a problem because, compared to some mountain towns, there isn't any sort of satellite cheaper area that is accessible. It really pushes people to having to live, down in Denver, and it becomes unfeasible to work up here and, kind of be part of this community. So I would just encourage you guys to keep that focus on, trying to get more affordable housing options available up here and sort of move them through with alacrity, just so that they do become reality. And I know that this county is hard to build in. There's not a whole lot of flat land. There's not a whole lot of accessible area with all of the mountains here. And so I know that does make putting in more units difficult, but I do think it's something that needs to happen, or a lot of that kind of seasonal or I don't know, less affluent element of this county won't be able to stay here and to live here. And I think that would be a shame. I guess that's all I had.
All right, thank you, Mr. Pike, for your comments. That's pretty good. That's a 3-minute. Okay, next we have Rod McPhail. Rod McPhail. Okay, Sandra
Gomke.
Thank you. Please come up and state your name and where you reside, please.
My name is Sandra Gomke. I live at 1743 Minor Street. Been there about 18 months. And yes, I'm the new kid on the block, so to speak. But I'm going to read this. Habitat for Humanity is a nonprofit organization established in 1976 whose sole purpose is to provide affordable housing with a side helping of neighborhood revitalization. They acquired the property at 16th Virginia in December of 2018 with the goal of building 8 townhouses with affordable mortgages for local residents. Almost 3 years now working with the city. After reading last month's minutes and comments in the Clear Creek Current, I see there's a question of safety regarding the hill at 16 in Virginia. I've seen it. It is gravel with major ruts. This is something the city should have taken care of years ago. However, now that Habitat wants to build there, the reasons for turning them down is said safety issue. Why? That safety issue is not Habitat's problem, but a problem for the city. A cul-de-sac, a one-way street, and a refill the hill on Wall Street are all good ideas to repair this problem. Why deny the residents of Idaho Springs an affordable home? Teachers, restaurant workers, first responders, healthcare workers all deserve a home nearer to their work. Who wants to drive through the mountains in the dead of winter? Salaries for these jobs do not allow workers the opportunity to buy houses in Idaho Springs. In 2019, before COVID, Idaho Springs had seen a 148% decline in population. Median home prices are now between $318,000 to $397,000 if you want to live way out of town. But single family houses in town are listed for $225,000, $675,000, and $800,000. Who can afford these prices? Certainly not the physician's assistant, the grade school teacher, or the wait staff at the restaurants. Tourism is a big deal here in Idaho Springs, but it's the employees who deserve that tourism. Tourists won't come back or recommend Idaho Springs to their friends if there aren't enough service providers and they have to wait for food for long periods of time. Carson Elementary School has an online C rating according to Niche and 3 out of 10 on Public School Review. These websites are used when people are looking to move to Idaho Springs with their families. Providing affordable housing for teachers will go a long way to improve school rating that may encourage growth in the city. A better commute will improve employee morale and therefore improve how these employees perform their jobs. Idaho Springs should embrace Habitat for Humanity's help in improving living conditions for Idaho Springs residents. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Sandra. Next we have Drew Van Doren.
Hi, I'm Drew Van Doren. I live at 1414 Wall Street. And I've been aware of the Habitat plan for 3 years. I could reiterate pretty much everything that Sandra just said, but I won't. It has, unfortunately, in the community, turned into a very divisive conversation where it appears that neighbors are against Habitat for Humanity. And I just want to say that's absolutely not true. As a realtor, I usually recuse myself from these conversations just because the bias is unavoidable. But in this case, I will say that I was surprised at the density of what Habitat chose to put there. I do believe that they went through all the appropriate things with the planning commissions to get them approved. My concern every time I come down 16th Street on Wall Street, though, is that I'm going to kill somebody. And it's not just in the wintertime. You know, we have 2 4-wheel drives and I have a 2-wheel drive vehicle, and it doesn't matter what time of year it is. There's always someone parking next to the Elks, getting out of their car and standing and just looking around in the middle of the street. And we're familiar, all of us that live up there are familiar with the hill. We know we pretty much need to stop at Rick's, wave, ease around the corner, and then kind of prep ourselves for any kids that are gonna be on bicycles, and then go down, because you can only catch yourself at the bottom, which is right in the middle of the Virginia intersection. And God help you if the freeway is closed and everybody is for some reason coming off of Colorado onto Virginia, going the opposite direction of the way people usually park. It is a massive hazard. What I'm hearing from my neighbors outside of this room, what I'm hearing from my neighbors inside this room, is this is sort of not a Habitat for Humanity issue for any of us. It's a safety issue, like just period. So I was concerned when I looked at the documents that were part of the packet for the work session. The proposed street amendments made me really wonder if the engineers had ever walked down Wall Street. Like the two-way, there's no way that our street is a two-way street. You know, you can't put a two-way street in front of, I don't remember whose house, the purple house that's down the road from us. You can't do that. There's just no room. I'm not sure the road needs to be moved, but it does need to be improved. And I think that not making it a 4-way direction would help a lot, as well as a 4-way stop on 16th in Colorado, because when they do clog up Colorado, we can't get out of our neighborhood. People that park, we need the parking in town, but when people are parked in front of the Elks and in front of the Elks parking lot, when you come down 16th, you can't see down Colorado to safely pull out. You just have to hope people are waiting for you. Thank you, and I hope that we all work this out without just tearing apart everybody. It's been a long couple of months.
Thank you. I have Linda Moore.
Good evening, I'm Linda Moore, and I live at 3059 Happy Trail in Evergreen, Colorado. And I'm honored to be here tonight to share my story of receiving a home from Habitat in 1998. I was renting a house by the Evergreen Lake with my daughter. I received no child support from my husband, who was ex-husband in California. And I was paying 75% of my income as an assistant at the Montessori school in Evergreen for a rent. So I had to do something, and I happened to buy a Canyon Courier and saw the ad and called Habitat, and they said, you're just the kind of person that we want to help. And so I was babysitting, house sitting after school and on the weekends to make ends meet. After I received and worked on my house and friends and family, and Habitat volunteers worked on my home, I then paid 25% of my income for my housing expense. When I received that, I did not have to do all the house sitting and dog sitting and horse sitting and whatnot and childcare. And so I pursued my education. As a Montessori assistant, I did receive my associate Montessori directorship for 3 to 6-year-olds from Mecker in Boulder, Montessori Education Center of the Rockies. And then that was an associate degree. And then I went to Colorado Christian University, where I got my degree in organizational management, which then pushed me forward in my Montessori and got my full credential as a Montessori teacher. After that, I went to the University of Colorado, Denver, and received my master's in education specific to early childhood education. And then I was asked to be an adjunct professor at Red Rocks Community College to teach early childhood classes there, which I've done. Habitat has supported me, and I have supported them over the years. I serve on the homeowner committee for selection and for support. I'm not an exception to a Habitat homeowner. Most Habitat homeowners can, once they can reduce their amount of money they pay for their home expenses, further themselves in their careers, maybe even buying a car, those kinds of things in our lives. Habitat saved my life. I provided for my family. I had friends and family come. And as a Christian organization, as it says in John 15:13-12-17, Christ says, no greater love than this, than a man lay down his life for his friends. Christ did that literally for all of us as Christians who believe in Christ, all of us, regardless. However, in Habitat, my friends and family came and gave up their time and gave up their lives to come work on my house. There were people who came that I didn't even know. And I have a board in my house that says, from Joshua, for me and my house will serve the Lord. And I had people who came that I didn't even know sign it. Kids who were 16 and older who came. But anyway, I just wanted to say,
Okay,
that's what Habitat did for me.
all right.
And I
thank you very
hope that
much for your
that
comments.
will happen to others.
Okay, next we have Michael Kazenbaum.
Hello. I love Habitat for Humanity. I always have, I always will. I've met so many great people working with Habitat, with homes because of Habitat. I've worked with Habitat, I've advocated for Habitat, I've made movies for Habitat. That's not what this is about. And Drew spoke so well about that fact. Again, like I said, like a couple weeks ago, this is hard for us because, I mean, maybe, for me, I love Habitat, okay? In a docudrama I made recently, I thought about this just now, actually. I made a movie about a year ago, a feature film about a mogul, a movie mogul. It's based on a true story. I have to say this. And in a scene, an important scene in the movie, this guy who feels like his whole life has been meaningless says, maybe I should just go build homes for Habitat for Humanity, right? So that's in a movie I just made. The residents just want this safe. We are all for some appropriate, safe version of this project. It just has to slow down. It just has to, you have to make the decision, actually. You have to just slow it down, figure the road out. All these residents are, the road's dangerous, the road's dangerous, the road's dangerous. It's possible that if you decide to pass this, things that need to get done for that road don't get done. That's it. When I first heard Rick raving about this, I thought he was a lunatic. Then I started walking up and down the road because I moved here recently. Every time I walk up and down that road, I trip. That's completely sober. I can't I'm healthy. I can't navigate that road well walking. I borrowed Rick's truck once to go to Home Depot. I could barely navigate it driving. It was scary. It felt like a roller coaster. I thought, okay, Rick, keep raving. Something's got to be done about that road. This council is uniquely positioned, actually, to delay something that just shouldn't get done. It shouldn't continue as is. Let's make it happen. Let's all make it happen at some point in the near future after that road is completely sorted out. That's how I feel. We're lucky we haven't had a major tragedy. Okay, we can do something about it now. There's so many times in history where people are given an opportunity to kind of fix something for whatever reason, something got passed, and then suddenly it's like, well, wait a second, this might not be the smartest choice. We're now in that position. Right now, you're in that position to just slow it down. I want the project. It's right next to me. It's right below me. I'm the most affected by it. I love affordable housing. I'm all for affordable housing. I'm all for the project. Let's all build it together. You know, Habitat for Humanity in this town, in that spot, just wait a little while. Make sure it's absolutely safe. Habitat for Humanity, for our conscience, for safety. That's it.
Thank you. Okay, Stephanie Klein.
I'm Stephanie Klein. I currently reside at 500 3rd Street in Georgetown. Unfortunately, I do have to move by the end of this month. I am also one of Habitat for Humanity's applicants who have been put on hold due to the initial denial of the project. My support for Idaho Springs Habitat for Humanity project would be the same regardless of being an applicant. I have resided in Clear Creek County for several years and am currently employed by the county. Even with a steady, reliable career, I am priced out of the current real estate market here. Local rents are also skyrocketing, preventing renters from saving money, which in turn prevents them from buying a home and settling down in our community. Sometimes renters are even paying more than a mortgage in properties that are in desperate need of repair while dealing with the uncertainties of whether the owner will sell or turn it into a short-term rental. Habitat for Humanity is offering young professionals the chance for stability and long-term growth in our community. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Stephanie. Alta Cass.
I'm Alita Cass. I reside at Wall Street, at 1600 Wall Street. And I thank you for hearing us speak. I, like everybody else, we enjoy Habitat for Humanity. But there are reasons that we have concerns. I would like the record to reflect that we sent over 20 pictures and videos to Andy and Jared to document the constant flow of traffic on 16th. U-turns, people just don't know what to do because Main Street's blocked off. Now we've got all the great, places, but people can't get through. They don't know where to go. We also sent a YouTube video link to show what it's like to go down a hill at 16% grade. Wall Street's 20%. That's one of the reasons why we don't think it's safe. And that's one of the reasons why we can't stop easily. We have to look and double check before we go down the hill. The view obstruction is an issue because when these buildings are built, it will create a blind spot, which you can't replace. That doesn't even account for the ice and the shade it will contribute to the streets. And then we have to figure out, what do we do? Our view is going to be totally obstructed as well. I mean, that's a minimal thing, but it's something to consider. The density is also an issue. We've gone from 3 homes in that space to 8. There's a shuttle that goes down here. Now, Clear Creek is a pretty big county. I'm starting to wonder, I don't have a problem with Habitat for Humanity building, but this place, I just wonder if it's really safe for our community. And then I also think that there should be some green space for these people living in.
I'm sorry, could you
Green
speak up?
space, green space. There really isn't. What they're looking at is diagonal. There's just not enough space there. And another thing that one of my neighbors brought up was, we can't get a fire truck, we can't get emergency vehicles in that area right now. How much worse is it gonna be with the shade on the hill and trying to get people on there? Thank you.
Thank you, Alita. Okay, I'm not gonna let Rick Scott speak again. Once is enough. Andrew Yard. State your name and where you reside, please.
So I'm Andrew Yard. I reside here in Idaho Springs. I also own Smoking Nose Barbecue. I wasn't really prepared for all this. George hollered at me just to come in and check this out and wanted to say something. But mostly it sounds like we have no idea what to do with that road. And I know that road's always been bad. But that also doesn't mean that that property wasn't already sold and made for this. So in my mind as a business owner, and I'm thinking about all the employees that have troubles day to day, and I actually bought a house to put employees into, so we can just keep people. Like, this is the hardest it's ever been. Town, several restaurants are closing down 2 to 3 hours early now. maybe even closing a whole day or a whole, just letting go. But we haven't even changed our hours back to 9. I can't staff well enough to stay open late. If that is any reflection on like an 8-hour unit, I don't know if that's probably minimal, but like anything to help any of those people is probably what I'm like leaning towards. But at the same time, it doesn't sound like anyone has any proposed ideas how to fix the worst street that's always been that way in town. We built a bunch of houses on a steep hill. So, like I said, if I had to lean somewhere, it still has to be like that property, and it's already someone else's property. How do you fix the road if we don't have anything proposed for it? So, it's not much of a lean, honestly, but if I had to choose one thing. But yeah, thanks, and I hope this all gets figured out.
All right, thank you, Andrew. Cole Dolph.
Hi, my name is Cole Dolph. I live at 1606 Wall Street. My main concern here has always been the safety. It will be the safety. I don't understand why we can't build less homes there that are smaller. It's gonna cast a huge shadow on this 20% grade that's sunny all the time. It melts the snow. It's still a super dangerous hill. It's gonna be so dangerous. There's gonna be blind spots. Me and my neighbors did the best to take pictures and show where the building would be based on it being 4 feet above the Elks Lodge. I don't know if anybody wants to look at those, but it's gonna create a huge shadow on Wall Street on my driveway on a 20% grade. I am scared for anybody walking down there getting killed, and I'm scared for anybody driving down that road killing. Okay, that just needs to be addressed, and there's ways to address that. I also don't think $350,000 is affordable by any means, no matter what way you do it. I want to set lower income families of Clear Creek County up for success, and that's not happening. You're squeezing so much money out of them. What does that do for their mental health, having that huge bill on their head with the income being so low? And I'm here to strive for better, not to say like, this is market value, this is what we're gonna charge poor people who make enough. Like, no, like lower income residents deserve better than that. And they deserve some green space that's not 12 feet up on a hillside. I don't know if anybody has seen the green space that's there, but it's literally up a 12 feet concrete retaining wall. It's a joke. So I want to consider the well-being, the mental health, the living, the quality of life of the lower income residents of Clear Creek County. And I want to take that into consideration. But above everything, I want to take safety into consideration. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Cole. All right, that's all of our unscheduled public comment. I'd just like to say first, thank you all for your comments and your concerns. And I hope you don't, none of you, I hope you don't feel that what you're expressing about the safety of 16th Street is falling on deaf ears, because that's not the case. We immediately called our JDA, our city engineers, to do some assessment on that road. And we did have a work session, and we talked about it for probably almost 40 minutes today. We have come up with a solution that we have directed our city engineers to look at this road, to be able to touch this road. And it's two separate projects, 16th Street and what its capacity is, and the habitat are two separate issues. As JBA told us today, what we're going to do is we're looking at resurfacing that. Just to help you understand, if the city came in and had to redo that road, we would have to bring it in compliance with our standard at 7%. A few of the designs that showed wasn't even really going to get us to 7%, which if we rebuild a road and it's not built to our standard, it puts us in another liability situation. So we're looking at that. A couple of the other options is to try to get to a 7%. Some of you would lose your homes. And I don't think this council is willing to condemn homes to build this road.
And, you know, we want to do what's right for the community and the safety for this road, but also we don't want to say, hey, you know, your house, and your house is going to have to go away. There's a lot more to that road and to Wall Street than what the general public knows about. And that's city right of way. Okay. Wall Street does not belong to the city. And the retaining walls of those properties are the responsibility of property owners. So when we talk about rebuilding a road, then property owners are going to have to pony up some money to rebuild these retaining walls to hold these roads up. So this is a much bigger thing than just 16th Street coming down. So with that, I just wanted to assure you that what you have expressed is not falling on deaf ears whatsoever. We took it as soon as the two meetings that we had and heard your feelings and expressions. We got our city engineer to come up with some concepts. Those concepts are available on our website. Like I said, we had a work session today about it, and we have given direction to our city engineers to start putting together a plan for drainage, resurfacing, and figuring out what we can do to make that road better. To bring it from a 20+% grade to a 7% grade is really, to be honest with you, nearly impossible in that area. Unless we punched out and got right on the I-70 from Rick's house. He can get on the highway and get right on the highway. That's the way to get 7%. So I just want everybody, you know, the public, all you folks, you concerned citizens, that we're taking this and we're not taking it lightly. We are doing our due diligence to look at this road. So I just wanted to preface that. I appreciate that. All right, thank you. Okay. We are going to move on to, we were going to come out of, we're going to take our city council hats off, and now we are going to put on our liquor licensing authority. We have a request tonight for a modification of premises from Hard Luck Colorado Division, which is also known as Pickaxe Pizza. So this hearing will come to order. This is a public hearing before the liquor licensing authority of the city of Idaho Springs to take testimony for consideration to modify the license premises for Hard Luck Colorado Division LLC DBA Pickaxe Pizza located at 1640 Minor Street. Persons signed up for the public comment will be sworn in by the city clerk, and the order of this hearing will be as follows. We'll hear a staff report, we'll hear from the applicant, and then we'll take any public comment or testimony. At this time, this hearing is now declared open. It is 7:54. At this time, we will hear from our staff. Diane?
Mayor and Council, in accordance with CRS 44-3-311, notice of public hearing to be held by the Liquor Authority concerning the above referenced application. The application was published in the Clear Creek Current on July 7th, 2021, and is marked as Exhibit A and was posted on the premises on July 16th, 2020.
All right, thank you, Diane. We have Bruce still with us. Would you like to come up and speak to us, Bruce?
Sure.
If you would just state your name and where you reside, please.
My name is Bruce Boynton.
You raise your right hand.
Gotta get sworn in, I'm sorry.
Do you swear the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Sleeping. My name is Bruce Boynton. I own Pickaxe Pizza. I live at 508 Alice Road up on the hill. I just want to say, I understand what you guys are talking about with the roads. It's a bummer right there. That road does suck. I
Excuse me,
drive it
Bruce,
all the
please keep this to the public hearing.
Sorry.
The public hearing. Thank you.
Sorry. Pickaxe Pizza would like to use its courtyard between the two buildings for seating, and we'd like our patrons to be able to have a beer, or a glass of wine, or a drink out there. We've got the fence all up. The gate is hung off right now because we had a wood delivery today, but it's all functionable and lockable, and we just want to use our space.
All right. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you.
Do I have anybody in the public that would like to make comment?
Okay, I'll do it.
Wait a minute, I said I wasn't gonna let Rick Scott.
I haven't moved yet.
State your name and where you reside.
1548 Wall Street.
yeah, that's a nice space they have. It's like a beer garden back there, so to speak. And it's got a nice fence around it, and I see no problem as a living close by there. I think that'd be great. The man deserves it after all he's been through. That's all I want to say.
All right, thank you, Rick. Anybody else, public comment or testimony? All right. Okay, this hearing is now declared closed. It is 7:56. And we will go to council discussion. Council? So just one thing I'd say, I'm sure that Pickaxe, when they did their liquor license, maybe wasn't expecting or had perceived that was already included in their serving area. And I think it's a great area. He's done a lot of good work back there, put some tables and stuff back there. And I can see for the modifications of his premises, serving purposes.
The applicant's been responsible as of date too, right?
I'm sorry?
The applicant has had responsibility as of date.
Yes.
There's no incidents or.
All right, any other discussion, council? Okay, can I have a motion?
I move to approve the application for the modification of premises for Hard Luck Colorado Division LLC based upon a finding that the applicant meets all criteria set forth in Colorado Liquor Regulation 47-302.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion, last chance, council. Can I have roll call, please?
Michael Hillman.
Yes.
Scott Pennell.
Yes.
Jeff Harmon.
Yes.
Al Follen.
Yes.
Joe Hardy.
Yes.
Rick Cavalli.
Yes.
Jim Park.
Yes.
Motion passes. There you go, Bruce.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, now we are going to go to Slaymaker Cellars. Let's see, and we were just wanting, the Slaymakers are wanting to provide, is it mead? Did I say that right? Mead at the Rapid Grass Festival? Is that correct? Am I talking about the right thing?
I didn't know what it was for, but yes.
You didn't know? Okay, this was submitted by Samantha from the rec center. So what are we actually doing? Getting approval for to be able to
Taste wine.
for
Tasting.
Okay,
It's a sales room. You have to approve it.
okay. So do I have a motion?
Actually, Mr. Mayor,
Yes, you want to speak?
Kent Slaymaker, 2036 Virginia Street. I apologize. I'm so sorry.
You swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Diane, Mayor, sorry, this is not, sorry. You do not have to have a public hearing on this, so that's lovely that you just swore in to tell the truth, but you didn't have to. We trust you. Mayor and council, the state liquor laws allow you to review one of these types of applications without a hearing, and to simply evaluate it in terms of its potential impacts on things like traffic and noise, because it's not, particularly in this case, it's not a permanent, modification like Pickaxe's just was. This is a one-timer sort of event. So happy to hear from the applicant if he wishes to speak with you and to answer any questions, but you don't need to go through all the formality of swearing in if you don't want.
Okay, thank you, Carmen. Kent, go right ahead.
No problem. I was just gonna say yes, mead, and it's just a food that Rapid Grass.
And isn't this just done through the special events permit?
No,
So this is different,
right. He has a limited winery license,
okay?
and every time he has a sales room, which could be at a special event or downtown, he has to get approval
Oh, okay.
for a sales room.
So all we need is a motion for approval to serve at the Rapid Grass. Thank you, Kent. Motion.
I would move that we approve Slaymaker Cellars for the one-day event at the Rapid Grass with the premises control plan. And I guess that's it.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and seconds on the table. Last chance for discussion. So what time does Rapid Grass start and finish? We were talking about that today. I don't think I ever got an answer.
I'm not 100% certain. I believe it's on the
Is it on here?
Yeah, Mayor, it says,
10 to-
8/1/21 from, 3 PM till, 10 PM.
There you go. I didn't read that. Okay. Last chance for discussion? Roll call.
Michael Hillman.
Yes.
Scott Pennell.
Yes.
Rick Carmen.
Yes.
Bob Boland.
Yes.
John Curtis.
Yes.
Rebecca Bailey.
Yes.
Jim Clark.
Yes.
All right, planning and community development, you have anything for us? Jared?
Not at this time.
All right, thank you. City Attorney, Carmen, you have anything additional for us? All right, thank you. We will now move down to our resolutions. Do I have a motion?
I would move to approve resolution number 8, series 2021, a resolution conditionally approving a final development plan on a property known as 1628 Virginia Street, Idaho Springs, Colorado, for a residential townhome project. With the following added conditions. 1, amend the site plan to increase the western side yard setback to a minimum of 18 feet. 2, methods used to create the increased side yard must comply with code. However, no increase in the total number of proposed bedrooms or density shall be allowed.
Second. Do I have a second?
Second.
John, second? Okay, discussion. Last chance for discussion.
You know, I want to say that both sides really had a compelling discussions, arguments, debate. The habitat, when you say habitat, you automatically think of good things that have been done across the United States. I don't think anyone here can deny that. But like any other organization, every time you do something, no one's ever done anything 100%. I think sometimes errors are made in judgment or mistakes. I think the community is open to habitat. I just think, and I think we've made some conditions here that would be maybe more acceptable. And you talked a lot about safety. I think what I got out of it is that it's not so much, it is a lot about safety, but it's about a way of changing community life in that area. I don't know if I have the right to do that. Habitat, like I say, is good. I think this happens to be a mistake the way it is. And I would be open, as a lot of people in the audience, hopefully some of the council members, to maybe go back to the drawing board and maybe improve on it even a little better. When we were talking about the streets today, we heard that the walls that's right on the property of Habitat, we assume that when their people looked at it, they think the wall's okay. What I got out of our engineer today, that the wall can use some work. And once the building is built and the people move into that, into those homes, and something occurs to that wall, those applicants or those residents at that time will be responsible for fixing that wall. And I'm not a wall guy, but the way I understand, that can be very expensive. And we're talking about people who are economically on the lower end of the pendulum, and that's why they're talking about maybe, giving homes to them or selling homes to them. And that would put them in a financial bind. I don't know how they could afford that. If I understood that correctly, the mayor's more sharp on that than I am, may correct me, and I don't mean to give any misinformation, but I just think what this thing does, the building does at this time, yes, it's a safety issue, but I also think it takes away a quality of life that these residents seem to be enjoying. And I find it very difficult. I think you have to make decisions with your heart and your mind. One tells the other what to do. And my heart tells my mind that I don't think I have the capacity as an individual to take away other people's way of life. So that's just my viewpoint of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Art. Anybody else? What I would say with this also, the safety concerns about this, the council is looking at different accesses into that property, potentially turning the street into a one-way east, so there would be no westbound traffic coming down the hill for a conflict with people coming off of Wall Street, as you could go up 16th to Virginia and take a right. So the city is looking at all these things into how to help Habitat and that area to improve the movement of traffic. We know how traffic is, especially right now. We haven't seen it this busy in town since I've been here for 17 years. I mean, this year it's just crazy. And people get into, we know when the traffic's backed up, they're on High Street, they're on Wall Street, they're on Virginia, they're everywhere. And it's going to happen. It's unfortunate we can't shut the exit down, not let anybody in. So we are very looking at this. Another thing that the public needs to know is the city is bound by a code. And I'm talking about our municipal code. When somebody takes a property and owns a piece of property, they have rights to that property. They have a checklist to follow to make sure that everything that the city is requiring them to do is checked off and approved. Once that is done, the council is in a position that whatever the developer did, you did everything that was asked of the city. So we have no, to be honest with you, we don't have any grounds for denial. If we denied it, well, we're going to go to court, and the judge is probably, I don't know about the judge, but I believe George is going to look and say, wait a minute, they did their checklist, and you don't have any grounds for this denial for this project. Being on council is tough decisions, and following legislation and the guidance that we have to follow as council members. So as the council votes tonight, I don't want anybody to think that we're not listening to the folks that have concerns. Unfortunately and fortunately, we are bound by our own law. How that can change, council members can say, we want to take this code and this zoning code and we want to add and modify. Of course, that's a long and lengthy process. It goes through planning commission, public process, and then comes back to city council for a decision. So with that, I just want to express to the community, if you didn't know, that council sometimes has their hands tied. The applicant met all the requirements, did everything they were supposed to do, and we have it on our plate for approval or denial. I just wanted to preface that to everybody tonight before we take a vote. Okay, anything else, council? Roll call.
Michael Hillman.
Yes.
Scott Pennell.
Yes.
Chuck Harmon.
Yes.
Bob Boland.
Yes.
John Curtis.
Yes.
Art Cacavelli.
No.
Jim Clark.
No.
Okay, motion passes, resolution passes. Okay, we will go to resolution number 15. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve resolution number 15, series 2020, a resolution adopting the city of Idaho Springs goals for 2021 through 2022.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion second, discussion. I'd just like to say thanks, council, for your participation in pulling these goals together. I'm going to have Andy put them on a big piece of printout so we can hang them on the wall. So every time we come in, we can look at those goals and make sure that we are moving towards those goals and making accomplishments, or if we need to look at it again and make some changes. So that's all I have. Anybody else discussion? Roll call.
Michael Hillman.
Yes.
Scott Pennell.
Yes.
Chuck Harmon.
Yes.
Bob Boland.
Yes.
John Curtis.
Yes.
Art Cacavelli.
Yes.
Jim Clark.
Yes.
All right, we'll now move to the ordinance first readings. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve ordinance number 12, series 2021, an ordinance amending sections 2-51, 2-53, and 2-56 of the Idaho Springs Municipal Code to address the creation of a deputy city clerk position and to clarify other positions and reporting structures within the administration department.
Do I have a second? Yeah, Jim Clark as second. Discussion.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
sorry.
Council.
I know you usually apologize for interjecting. You usually take more input on second reading of ordinances than first, but I just wanted to make clear something I mentioned in work session. So for those who weren't there or maybe who didn't follow us on the live stream, ordinances number 12 and 14 are the ones that are before you for first reading tonight. 13 got scratched. So ignore that one, please. But this ordinance 12 is really implementing your decision, which you previously made, to essentially sort of restructure the city clerk position in light of it being an elected position for the foreseeable future. That's what Ordinance 12 does. It sort of implements a new structure and a new deputy city clerk to, on staff, assume a lot of the duties for the elected city clerk, who is not expected to be a full-time employee in the future. And then ordinance number 14 is a different subject, but sort of related, because when we as staff began looking at chapter 2 in the code and how reporting structures worked and how the various departments were organized, your city administrator said, you know, let's sort of restructure things because they don't really reflect reality and how we really do things. So ordinance 14 is a little broader than just the deputy city clerk position, and that's why it's a separate ordinance. It really addresses department heads in particular all across the board. So that's a little more explanation that maybe I would have given you in study session if we had a little more time, but I know we were running short then.
All right, thank you, Carmen. And what I will say also, as Carmen mentioned, it is a first reading, so we're going to have time to have another work session and sit down and delve through this, through the criteria and the job descriptions and things like that. So we have some time. All right, any other discussion? Roll call.
Michael Hillman.
Yes.
Scott Pennell.
Yes.
Chuck Harmon.
Yes.
Bob Boland.
Yes.
John Curtis.
Yes.
Art Cacavelli.
Yes.
Jim Clark.
Yes.
All right, we will move to ordinance first reading number 14. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve ordinance number 14, series 2021, an ordinance amending chapter 2 of the Idaho Springs Municipal Code to transfer general oversight and management head to the city administrator and to codify the organization and duties of the water/wastewater department.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I'll have a second. Discussion. Roll call.
Michael Hillman.
Yes.
Scott Pennell.
Yes.
Chuck Harmon.
Yes.
Bob Boland.
Yes.
John Curtis.
Yes.
Art Cacavelli.
Yes.
Jim Clark.
Yes.
All right, now we will move to our second readings. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve ordinance number 11, series 2021, an ordinance zoning the property recently annexed to the city as the cemetery annexation to the city of Idaho Springs as park and recreation, parentheses P, under the city's zoning regulations.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion. So we're gonna have the cemetery as park and recreation, huh?
Dance on the board. Jason.
All right.
Why is that?
Huh?
Why did we decide to go that way?
Jerry, could you answer that for us?
Yeah, we thought that the cemetery best fit in the parks and recreation category rather than in a residential district or a commercial business district. We thought the use of the property being more of a passive use fit better into the parks and recreation division or zone.
You know, actually, that brings a question. What is the cemetery itself zone?
So when a property is annexed into the city, it's typically annexed, well, it's always annexed in as a residential property. And it is up to the city to rezone that property within 90 days of annexation, if they so choose. You know, you can stay with the residential zone. Therefore, we are working our way through the rezoning process towards the parks and recreation.
So the people in the cemetery are residents right now?
Right now, yes.
Okay. That's interesting.
You know, I will add just a little bit to that. The city really has to bring under Colorado law any property annexed under our city zoning laws. We don't have the option to not zone it. So I'll just add that layer to it. I think we have 90 days within the effective after the effective day of an annexation ordinance to bring a property underneath our zoning rules.
So Carmen, I understand we would have had to like August 24th to bring it in, but that doesn't prohibit us at some point in the future for changing, say, 2 acres that does not adjoin the cemetery?
Correct. Absolutely. Great question. No, if, just like any other property, Councilor Harmon, if the owners of property down the road wish to petition you and the city for another classification, we'd run that through our process and see if it squared up with our comp plan and such, and it would absolutely, potentially be eligible for a rezone down the road for sure.
All right, thank you.
You bet.
Right, any more discussion? Roll call.
Michael Hillman.
Yes.
Scott Pennell.
Yes.
Chuck Harmon.
Yes.
Bob Boland.
Yes.
Joan Curtis.
Yes.
Art Cacavelli.
Yes.
Jim Park.
Yes.
All right, motion passes, and we will move to our next ordinance, second ordinance reading. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve ordinance number 9, series 2021, an ordinance of the city council defining and clarifying the duties of the city clerk after the 2021 municipal election and repealing and reenacting section 2-41 of the Idaho Springs Municipal Code.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Councilman Pennell, says second. Discussion. Okay, roll call.
Michael Hillman.
Yes.
Scott Pennell.
Yes.
Chuck Harmon.
Yes.
Bob Boland.
Yes.
Joan Curtis.
Yes.
Art Cacavelli.
Yes.
Jim Park.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. We already heard from our finance officer tonight in work session. We will move to city administrator. Andy?
Mayor and council, you have my report with one request for action, please.
All right. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve a services agreement with Suzanne Rogers for municipal court prosecutor services at a rate of $1,500 a month effective August 1st, 2021.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, and I have Bob second this time. And discussion.
Sure seems like she's been good for
Quite some time.
a long time. Yeah, she's well deserved for that. Especially what she does.
So this is gonna be an annual
Yes.
approval?
Well,
It's $1,500 a month.
services agreement. Yep.
I know.
Oh.
How long
Is
is
the
it good
contract-
for?
I don't know how long the contract is. Do we do
The contract-
I think we do annual contracts and renewal annually.
It's
Yeah.
for any,
Right?
sorry,
Automatic
it's not
renewal.
for a defined term, mayor council. It just goes on and on, although each party has the ability to terminate on 30 days notice. So until she, 15 years from now, when she asks for another raise, I guess we'll be
Yeah.
looking at this again. I will,
Month to month lease.
It's always those attorneys that want to try to get at you.
I want to say this, I did not mention this in the work session, and I'm happy to say this publicly in a public meeting. It's, I think Suzanne Rogers does a fantastic job. I'm glad you're considering this. I'm glad that you have voiced some support for her. The job of the municipal prosecutor is incredibly difficult, often thankless, but very important, just like our municipal judge, just like Kelsey, the court clerk, like all our staff at City Hall. She probably doesn't get that many pats on the back for doing really good job for the city and putting a very good face on the city month after month. So I'm glad you're considering this. I certainly think she does a good job. When we don't hear complaints about how court goes of a severe nature, that means someone's doing a good job for us there. So just want to say that.
All right, thank you, Carmen. Thank you. Last chance for discussion. Roll call.
Michael Hillman.
Yes.
Scott Pennell.
Yes.
Chuck Harmon.
Yes.
Bob Boland.
Yes.
Joan Curtis.
Yes.
Art Cacavelli.
Yes.
Jim Park.
Yes.
And we all had Andy's staff report in our packet. Any questions for Andy? Okay, city clerk, Diane?
Mayor and council, I have my staff report for your review with one request for action.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Move to approve Diane Brees to sign the IGA with the county for the November 2nd coordinated election.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, John, second, discussion. Roll call.
Michael Hillman.
Yes.
Scott Pennell.
Yes.
Chuck Harmon.
Yes.
Bob Boland.
Yes.
Joan Curtis.
Yes.
Art Cacavelli,
Yes.
Jim Clark.
Yes.
And any questions for Diane? Has City Hall been, so now we have it open and people are coming in? Is it crazy? Everybody behaving themselves or?
No.
I think it was the first day she called me or texted me, so I'm gonna kill you. Yeah.
How's the price determined by the county? They charge us for this, right?
For the,
The coordinated election?
Yeah. Have they given us the price yet or?
It's based on how many things are on the ballot, right?
Yeah.
Okay, anything else for Diane? All right, PD, Chief?
Council, you have my staff report. We have no request for action. But we are actively recruiting, so if you know anyone who wants to be a police officer, we have a couple of openings.
All right,
Just saying.
thanks, Chief. Any questions for Chief? All right,
Will he have involvement with that rapid grass and the alcohol and the?
well, they have to provide their own security. Do we have the Rangers or somebody that's gonna be over there Saturday?
Mayor, I don't know if we had arranged for the Rangers to be there, but certainly we can make arrangements if we need to have.
Was that part of their
extra.
application? That they were gonna have security? Well, it hasn't lined out that they're gonna be marking hands and stuff. for
Yeah, that
alcohol.
staff is is taking care of enforcement of checking IDs and stuff, it says.
And that's been done before.
Yeah, I think their staff has the shirts that are marked. Brings up a question, how short of a lead time do you need with the Rangers? It sounds like it'd be pretty short.
Well, it can be, so I certainly can reach out and see if they have anyone available. Typically, I've already sent requests like for all the events already throughout the entire summer. So this was an event that I didn't realize was gonna be alcohol, and so that's probably my fault. So.
it's supposed to be a shorter version of what it's been in the
Yeah,
past.
it's usually
It's just
3
one
days.
day, right?
It's just
1 day
Saturday,
now,
yeah, 3 to 10.
Three, it used to be 3.
3 days, Friday evening, Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah.
We can make arrangements however we need to.
The folks from Rapid Grass, they're pretty, they know the drill, they're pretty good.
Yeah.
Like Morris and.
Yeah, guys, this is their,
Good track record.
what year is this one? They're,
11th?
well, I thought it was 10th or something.
I think they did their 10th. They wanted to make sure they get that 10th in a couple of 11th years.
They've done well.
Okay. Thanks, Chief. We'll move to Public Works, Streets, Parks, Water and Wastewater. John?
Mayor and council, you have my staff report with no request for action.
All right, any questions for John? So one thing I will say, we did meet with JVA and we are preparing, I actually didn't get to be in the meeting, but preparing the bid documents for project 1 with the 400,000 that we've got to get our public works facility going. So we're actively pulling that together and going to advertise it.
I'm gonna have something I asked before because I forgot the answer. And the replacing the trees that have died around the curve at the CRC Park, you know, they were put in. I'm just wondering, I think we did contract, did we not? For those people?
No, we didn't contract to replace those. What we did install is Graham Construction and CDOT gave us about 18 trees and bushes. And we had those planted. And the trees that were donated to us, the arborist said they would not be a good tree to fit in that location because they are a larger flowering tree.
Oh, okay.
So it would be out into the roadway and blocking views. So unfortunately, it's almost next to impossible right now to find somebody to trim trees or to even install trees. It's just absolutely ridiculous. It's getting to the point with traffic paint and asphalt. We can't get asphalt, we can't get traffic paint.
Yeah, I heard somebody said the cost of that yellow paint just skyrocketed, even if you could get it.
If you can get it. Everything right now is just next to impossible to get or to even have done.
Yes, and that's gonna be on our work session. Prices increase and how crazy it's gotten out there. All right, thanks, John. Any other questions, council, for John? All right, history lesson, Bob.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I thought tonight's meeting would be so long. I mean, I have one, but I can save it for a couple weeks.
Everybody ready to get out of here?
Okay,
It's not.
Yeah, you open that door, Mayor.
I think somebody's waiting a moose for you. Oh, and that meeting adjourned, right?
Okay, I'll.
No, go ahead, Bob.
Okay, anyway.
All right, thanks for that.
The Early Fire Department, we have some great ancestors here in terms of water rights and everything else. And they certainly got busy and formed the fire department the day after the brewery burned down in this location right here. And so that was 1878, I think, or I wasn't there. Anyway, but in the Central Hose House, it was a very forward-thinking group of volunteers, and it was the Idaho Springs Fire Department. And one day we had a visiting fireman in the Central Hose House, and he looked up in the bell tower, and he just started saying, "Oh my God," he was really excited. And we have a prime example of an old Gamewell fire telegraph mechanism hanging about halfway up the tower there. And Idaho Springs was apparently one of the first of about 200 cities and towns in the United States to install one of these systems. And what it is basically, or what it was, there were 10 of the fire boxes, the alarm boxes around town. And there's still one remaining, I believe, by the door going into the existing firehouse, little red box on the side of the firehouse, the west end there. And the box had a key. It did not have a glass that anybody could break. And there were a committee of citizens, reliable citizens that lived in the immediate vicinity of each of these 10 fireboxes. They each had a key and they each assigned duty. So it was 24, or let's say, 24/7 coverage every day of the year, all the time. There were a lot of fires back in those days. Well, when somebody would report a fire to one of these individuals that it was on duty, and everybody in the neighborhood was aware of what the rotation was. They go turn the key and pull the lever. And the system was always charged with some wet cells, DC current, that were in the bottom of the library at the time. That might have been before the library, but anyway, they had to be heated. They were old lead acid batteries in glass cases, and it kept the system charged. Well, each alarm box had its own pattern of breaking the circuit. And that bell in the tower has a hammer on the outside that's connected to this mechanism. And every alarm box, had its own signal on the alarm. And it would repeat the alarm 4 times. And so it would be like 4 long ones with space in between, and then 3 quick ones. And so the system was always charged, and it was a fail-safe system. If the system went down and wasn't charged anymore, there was a special maintenance alarm that went out, say, to get it fixed. So anyway, in that tower right now was a prime example, apparently in the country, of a Gamewell fire telegraph. And we didn't know it until the Chicago fireman went berserk one day when he saw that. And so we've done quite a bit of reading since then. And again, there were 10 boxes around. There was one in each of the little hose houses. So that's it. Anyway, it's quite an amazing electromagnetic item. And by the way, it is the mechanical advantage or whatever is by weights on what's like a big bicycle chain. And these weights, there are 4 or 5 of them at least, and spare ones laying around in the bottom of the tower. They must weigh 50 pounds apiece. So this thing really, there's no question when it's alarmed, ready to go. but that's what rings the bell.
Was that around the turn of the century, you think?
It was the 1870s. We, I think received it here about 1884, 85, something like that. So it was very early. And the first one was in Boston. Gamewell Fire Alarm Company is still in business with different names and of course, very high tech and so on. And by the way, Gamewell old fire telegraph systems like this are still in place as backup systems in some areas of San Francisco and one or two other cities, part of New York City also. Because when electricity goes down, everything else, that system is alive.
I miss the page in town. I miss that.
Yeah.
When they used to sound the alarm.
Yeah.
They used to sound the horn.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well,
That was
early
early
that was
90s,
actually,
wasn't
You could hear it from one end of town.
I don't
to the
know
next.
when they took it out.
I-
I think early 90s. I think it
Oh,
was still
the latter part.
yeah.
It was still,
I know that the
It was
fire was
2000.
going off about 2 a.m. certainly got you up and around.
For sure.
around outside.
yeah,
Weather notwithstanding.
everybody knew the
Yeah.
page, you know?
Yeah. So there you go.
Thanks, Bob, for the history lesson.
Yeah.
It is 8:30 and meeting adjourned.